The witness changed his story on a Tuesday. Nobody noticed at first. It was such a small thing, a detail in a border patrol report, a timestamp that didn't quite align with the official record. The kind of discrepancy that should have meant nothing. Except it meant everything. Because that timestamp proved Ella couldn't have been where they'd said she was. Couldn't have done what they'd claimed. Couldn't have committed the crime that had earned her the whip, the exile, the destruction of everything she'd been. And Aiden, Alpha King Reformer, the man who'd rebuilt an entire pack structure on the foundation of truth and transparency, he saw the discrepancy and said nothing. Not yet. Because admitting doubt now would mean admitting he might have been wrong then. That the punishment he'd enforced, the law he'd upheld, the justice he'd delivered, all of it might have been built on lies. 3 years. 3 years since that day in the circle. 3 years of reformation and redemption and rebuilding. 3 years of proving that compassion could coexist with strength, that love could survive impossible odds, that broken systems could be remade. 3 years of believing the worst was behind them. And now this. A single line in a border report that made his hands shake and his wolf howl with a rage that had nowhere to go except inward. Because if Ella had been innocent, truly, completely innocent, then everything he'd done to her, everything he'd let the pack do to her, every moment of suffering she'd endured. He couldn't finish the thought. Couldn't let himself follow it to its logical, devastating conclusion. So he did what any man drowning in guilt would do. He investigated quietly, carefully, without telling anyone, especially not Ella, what he suspected. And with every piece of evidence he uncovered, the foundation of his carefully rebuilt world cracked a little more. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Shayla's Romance Library. If you're new here, hi, I see you, and I'm so glad you found us. If you've been with us since part 1, welcome home. You know what we do here. We tell stories that hurt beautifully, that make you feel everything, that remind you why truth matters, even when it comes too late. Especially when it comes too late. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your city, your country, your corner of the world in the comments. Let's see how far this pack reaches. This story? Part 2 of Ella and Aiden's journey? It's going to break you open in ways part 1 only hinted at. This is the story of what happens when the truth finally comes out. And it comes too late to fix anything. The second inconsistency appeared 4 days after the first. A pack member, Mara, one of the younger betas who'd been part of the patrol rotation 3 years ago, requested a private meeting with Aiden. She came to his study late at night, when Ella was already asleep, when the twins were finally quiet after hours of fussy crying that seemed to sense their mother's unease. Mara stood in front of his desk, trembling. Not with fear. With shame. "Your Majesty," she began, then stopped. Started again. "Aiden, I need to tell you something. About the night Ella was accused." Aiden's blood went cold. "What about it?" "I was there. On patrol. And what we reported, what I reported," her voice broke. "It wasn't exactly true." The words hung in the air like poison. "Explain." His voice came out flat. Dead. Because he already knew. Had suspected since that first discrepancy. But hearing it confirmed was different than suspecting. The pup we found, the rogue pup Ella, was accused of harboring. It wasn't in her cottage when we first searched. Mara's words came faster now, desperate. "We searched twice. The first time, there was nothing. But Elder Marcus, he told us to search again. Said we'd missed something. And the second time, she swallowed hard. The second time, the pup was there. Like it had just appeared. You think someone planted it? I know someone planted it. I was too afraid to say anything at the time. Marcus was powerful. The old council controlled everything. And I was just a junior patrol wolf. Who would have believed me? I would have. The words came out harsher than intended. If you'd spoken up during the trial, during the investigation, during any of the dozen moments when your testimony could have changed everything. I know. Tears streamed down Mara's face now. I know. And I've lived with that guilt every day for 3 years. Watching Ella be punished, exiled, nearly killed. Watching you tear yourself apart trying to fix what we'd broken. And I said nothing because I was a coward. Aiden wanted to rage at her, to unleash 3 years of guilt and fury on someone who deserved it. But what would that accomplish? Mara was just one voice in a chorus of lies. One small piece of a conspiracy that had destroyed an innocent woman. Who else knew? He asked instead. About the planted evidence? At least 3 other patrol wolves. Maybe more. And definitely Marcus and his inner circle. Mara's voice steadied slightly. But Your Majesty, it's worse than that. How could it possibly be worse? Because it wasn't just about Ella. The conspiracy, it was part of something bigger. They needed to prove you could be manipulated. That your judgment could be compromised. Ella was she stopped, seeming to realize how terrible it sounded. She was convenient. Close enough to you that punishing her would test your resolve, but not important enough politically that it would cause immediate upheaval. The calculation of it. The cold, measured cruelty of using a person, using Ella, as a test case for political manipulation. Aiden's wolf snarled, pushing against his skin, demanding he shift and hunt down every person involved and tear them apart. But he forced it down, forced himself to stay human, to stay rational, because rage wouldn't fix this, wouldn't undo the damage. Wouldn't give Ella back the 3 years she'd lost believing she deserved punishment for saving a child. I need names, he said quietly. Everyone involved. Everyone who knew. Everyone who stayed silent. Mara provided them. A list of 12 wolves, some still in the pack, some who'd left after the Reformation, all of them complicit in varying degrees. When she finished, Aiden dismissed her with instructions to remain available for official testimony. Then he sat alone in his study and stared at the list of names until the words blurred. 12 wolves. 12 people who'd knowingly participated in or enabled the destruction of an innocent woman. And he, the Alpha King, the reformer, the man who prided himself on justice, he'd been their weapon. He'd delivered the punishment. Enforced the exile. Stood by while Ella suffered because he'd believed the system was sound. Because he'd trusted that the evidence was real. Because he'd been too much of a coward to question deeply enough. The realization was suffocating. Ella knew something was wrong. 6 months pregnant with twins made her more perceptive, not less. She felt everything more intensely. Joy, fear, love, and the particular dread that came from watching her mate withdraw into himself. Aiden hadn't touched her in 4 days. Not sexually, they'd stopped that weeks ago as her pregnancy advanced, but at all. No casual kisses. No hand-holding. No moments where he'd rest his hand on her swollen belly and talk to their children. Just distance. And that terrible, haunted look in his eyes when he thought she wasn't watching. "Talk to me," she said one evening as they prepared for bed. Nothing to talk about. His response was automatic. Hollow. Aiden. She moved in front of him, forcing him to look at her. Whatever's happening, whatever's weighing on you, we face it together. That's what partners do. For a moment, she thought he'd confess. Thought he'd tell her whatever investigation he was clearly conducting in secret. Instead, he pulled her into his arms gentle, so gentle, like she was made of glass, and held her without speaking. And Ella, who'd learned to read silences the way others read books, understood. Whatever he'd discovered, it was bad enough that he couldn't bear to tell her yet. Bad enough that speaking it aloud would break something fundamental between them. So she let him hold her in silence and tried not to think about all the ways the world could still destroy them despite everything they'd survived. The third inconsistency came from an unexpected source, Zach. The former head enforcer who'd been part of the conspiracy 3 years ago, who'd been sentenced to exile, who should have been long gone from Pact territory, he sent a letter. Not to Aiden. To Liam. The beta brought it to Aiden immediately, his expression grim. "You need to read this," Liam said without preamble. "All of it. Before you decide what to do." The letter was long. Detailed. Written in Zach's precise hand with the kind of clinical detachment that made every word hit harder. It was a confession. Not of the conspiracy 3 years ago, Aiden already knew about that. But of something worse. Something that made the original crime look like a prelude to a much darker symphony. The evidence against Ella Hartley was fabricated from the start, Zach had written. But it wasn't random. We chose her specifically because of her relationship to you. Because she represented the kind of weakness traditional leadership couldn't allow, an alpha king who valued a low-ranking Omega's opinion, who listened to her ideas, who was already half in love with her even if he wouldn't admit it. We needed to prove you could be controlled. That personal feelings wouldn't interfere with your duty. So we created a test case. Plant evidence. Ensure conviction. Watch you enforce punishment despite any personal reservations. If you did, you were controllable. If you didn't, you were weak. Either way, we won. What I didn't anticipate was that you'd actually try to help her afterward. That you'd feel guilty. That the punishment would haunt you. I thought you'd enforce the law and move on. That's what strong leaders do. But you didn't move on. You obsessed. You investigated. You tore down the entire council structure because of one Omega's exile. And in doing so, you proved exactly what we feared, that she had power over you. That your judgment was compromised. I'm writing this now, 3 years later, because I've heard about your reformation. About the 17 packs joining your movement. About the model you're building. And I realized that what I thought was weakness, your refusal to sacrifice her, your willingness to burn down tradition for justice, that was actually the strongest thing you've ever done. But here's what you need to know. Ella Hartley was completely innocent. Not just of the second charge that got her exiled. Of the first charge, too. Both pups were planted. Both times, we manipulated evidence. Both times, we convinced you to punish someone who'd done nothing except exist as a threat to traditional authority. I'm telling you this now because you deserve to know the full extent of what we did. And because she deserves to know that every single punishment she endured, every moment of suffering, every day of exile, all of it was based on lies we built specifically to break both of you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm simply providing truth. What you do with it is your choice. Zach, Aiden read the letter 3 times. Then he stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the Capitol he'd worked so hard to reform. Behind him, Liam waited in silence. Finally, Aiden spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper. She was innocent. Both times. The first punishment, the one that started everything, it was built on fabricated evidence too. Yes, Liam confirmed quietly. I whipped an innocent woman. Exiled her. Let the pack destroy her reputation and her safety. All while believing I was upholding justice. You didn't know. I should have known. The words exploded out of him. I'm the Alpha King. It's my job to know. My responsibility to ensure justice is actually just. And I failed. I failed her in the worst possible way. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What did you do when you discovered you'd been the instrument of someone's destruction? When the system you'd trusted had weaponized your authority against an innocent person? I'm going to expose it, Aiden said finally. All of it. Publicly. Every lie. Every manipulation. every person involved. And then he stopped. Then I'm going to let the pack decide if I'm fit to continue leading them. Aiden, you can't, I can. I will. He turned to face his beta. Because if I don't, if I try to handle this quietly, if I protect my authority over truth, then I'm no better than Marcus was. Then Zach was. Then everyone who chose power over justice. And Ella? Does she know? No, the admission tasted like ash. I haven't told her yet. I wanted to be sure. To have all the evidence. To be able to present her with not just the truth, but justice. You need to tell her. Before this becomes public. She deserves to hear it from you. Aiden knew Liam was right. Knew that keeping this from Ella, even for good reasons, was another betrayal. But the thought of looking into her eyes and telling her that everything she'd suffered, every moment of pain and humiliation and exile, had been based on deliberate lies. How did you confess that to someone you loved? How did you admit you'd been the weapon someone else wielded against them? How did you ask for forgiveness for something unforgivable? The council hearing was scheduled for the following week. Routine business. Territory disputes. Resource allocation. The mundane work of pack governance. But Aiden added one item to the agenda. Under unfinished business. A review of evidence from a case 3 years old. Most council members wouldn't think twice about it. Old cases were sometimes revisited when new information came to light. It happened. But Ella, when she saw the agenda posted publicly as required by the new transparency laws, Ella knew exactly which case he meant. And she felt her carefully constructed peace begin to crumble. Because some wounds don't heal just because you stop bleeding. Some scars run too deep. And some truths, when they finally surface, don't bring relief. They bring devastation. The council hearing was still 5 days away. 5 days that felt like 5 years. Ella tried to maintain normalcy, attending to her duties as queen, working with the new council on reformation initiatives, preparing for the twins who kicked inside her with increasing urgency. But every moment was shadowed by the knowledge that something was coming. Something that would change everything again. She caught Aiden watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. His expression was haunted. Guilty. Like a man standing on the edge of a cliff trying to decide whether jumping would hurt less than falling. On the 3rd day, she couldn't take it anymore. Tell me, she said over dinner. They were alone, a rare occurrence these days with council meetings and public forums and the constant demands of leadership. Whatever you've discovered, whatever's eating you alive, just tell me. Aiden set down his fork carefully. After the hearing. No. Now. Her voice was firm despite the fear curling in her stomach. I've spent 3 years believing I deserved what happened to me. That I broke the law and paid the price. If that's changed, if something's different, I need to know. Ella, don't protect me from the truth. She reached across the table, took his hand. We promised each other. No more secrets. No more hidden investigations. Whatever this is, we face it together. He looked at their joined hands. At her swollen belly where their children grew. At her face, still beautiful despite the exhaustion of pregnancy, still fierce despite everything she'd endured. You were innocent, he said finally. Quietly. Both times. The evidence was planted. The charges were fabricated. All of it, everything that happened to you, was based on lies. The words hung in the air like stones dropped into still water. Ella didn't move, didn't react. Just stared at him with those deep brown eyes that had learned to hide everything. Explain, she said. So he did. He told her about the discrepancy in the border report. About Mara's confession. About Zach's letter detailing the full extent of the conspiracy. About the 12 wolves who'd knowingly participated in her destruction. He told her everything. And with every word, he watched something in her die. Not dramatically. Not with tears or rage or any of the reactions he'd half expected. Just a quiet dimming, like a light going out behind her eyes. When he finished, silence filled the space between them. "How long have you known?" Her voice was eerily calm. 10 days. Since the first discrepancy appeared. "And you didn't tell me." "I wanted to be sure. To have all the evidence before what?" She pulled her hand away from his. "Before you had to admit you destroyed an innocent woman? Before you had to face that every moment of suffering I endured was your fault." "It wasn't my fault," Aiden protested. "I was manipulated. We both were. The conspiracy, you held the whip." Her words were precise. Surgical. "You signed the exile order. You stood in front of the pack and declared me guilty. Twice. The conspiracy provided the lies, but you were the one who enforced them." "I know. Gods, Ella, I know." His voice broke. "And if I could go back, if I could undo any of it, but you can't." She stood slowly, her movements careful because of her pregnancy. "You can't undo it. Can't unwhip me. Can't give me back the 6 weeks I spent in that cell, or the months of exile, or the 3 years I've spent believing I deserved punishment for saving children. What do you want me to do?" The question came out desperate. "Tell me how to fix this. Tell me what you need." She stopped, took a breath. When she spoke again, her voice was frighteningly empty. "I need time. To process. To understand what this means. Ella, don't." She held up a hand. "Just don't. Not right now. I can't do this with you watching me like I'm something broken you need to fix." She left the dining room without another word, leaving Aiden alone with the wreckage of his confession. That night, Ella didn't come to bed. Aiden found her in the gardens, the ones she'd designed, the ones that had been her refuge during the early days of Reformation. She sat on a bench in the moonlight, one hand resting on her belly, staring at nothing. He didn't approach, just watched from a distance as his mate, his queen, his partner, the woman he loved more than his own life, processed the truth he'd finally confessed. She didn't cry, didn't rage, didn't do anything except sit in perfect stillness. And somehow, that was worse than any explosion would have been. Because Ella's stillness meant she was withdrawing, pulling back into herself, building walls that even he might not be able to breach. After an hour, she stood and walked back toward the manor. She passed within feet of where Aiden stood hidden in the shadows. She knew he was there. He was certain of it. But she didn't acknowledge him, didn't speak, just walked past like he was a ghost haunting her garden. And maybe, in a way, he was. The next morning, the pack woke to find notices posted throughout the capital. By order of the Alpha King, all wolves who were part of the patrol rotation 3 years ago, who served on the council during that time, or who had knowledge of the evidence presented in the case of Ella Hartley are required to present themselves for official testimony. Failure to comply will result in charges of obstruction of justice. The reaction was immediate. Wolves who'd thought that case was buried, who'd moved on, who'd assumed the Reformation meant the past was forgiven, suddenly found themselves summoned to answer for decisions made years ago. Some came willingly. Others had to be escorted by guards. And a few, 3, to be exact, fled the territory entirely rather than face what was coming. Liam brought Aiden the names of those who'd run. Kyle, Charlotte, and Elder Margaret, the beta reported. All 3 were part of Marcus's inner circle. All 3 were implicated in Zach's letter. "Send trackers," Aiden ordered. "Bring them back. Peacefully if possible. By force if necessary. They will answer for this." "The pack is unsettled," Liam continued. "People are asking questions. Wondering why you're reopening a case everyone thought was resolved. Some are saying," he hesitated. "Say it. Some are saying you're doing this because of your personal feelings for Ella. That you can't accept her guilt. that you're using your authority to rewrite history. The accusation stung precisely because it was what Aiden himself had feared. That exposing the truth would look like favoritism. Like a king who couldn't separate his heart from his duty. Then they can say that to my face at the hearing, Aiden responded coldly. When all the evidence is presented. When every lie is exposed. When they have to confront exactly what was done in this pack's name. And Ella? How is she handling this? Aiden's expression darkened. She's not. He stopped. She's gone somewhere I can't reach. Give her time. I'm not sure time will help. The admission came out raw. Because I'm not sure there's any amount of time that makes being punished for crimes you didn't commit acceptable. That makes being tortured for a conspiracy acceptable. That makes any of this acceptable. You didn't know. Doesn't matter. Aiden's voice was flat. I still did it. And she still suffered. And now she has to live with knowing that everything, all of it, was built on lies. While carrying our children. While serving as queen to a pack that destroyed her. The impossibility of it pressed down on him like physical weight. Maybe Liam started, then stopped. Maybe what? Maybe some wounds don't heal. Maybe some betrayals are too deep. Maybe Liam met his eyes. Maybe love isn't always enough. The words were a knife between Aiden's ribs. Because he'd built his entire reformation on the belief that love could overcome anything. That choosing compassion over cruelty, vulnerability over authority, partnership over power, that those choices mattered more than tradition or law or any system. But what if he was wrong? What if some betrayals were too fundamental to survive? What if Ella looked at him now and saw not her mate, not her partner, not the man who loved her, but the weapon that had been used to destroy her? Get everyone assembled for the hearing, Aiden said finally. Every wolf we've summoned. Every piece of evidence. We're doing this publicly. Completely transparent. And then he took a breath. Then we let the pack decide what justice looks like. Ella spent the days before the hearing preparing. Not emotionally, she couldn't. Her emotions were a frozen wasteland she didn't dare examine too closely. If she started feeling, she might never stop screaming. So instead, she prepared practically. She reviewed the original case files. Read the testimonies. Studied the evidence that had been presented against her. And with every page, she saw the holes. The inconsistencies. The places where the narrative had been twisted to serve a conclusion that had already been decided. How had she missed it at the time? But she knew the answer. She'd been too busy surviving. Too focused on enduring the punishment to question whether she deserved it. Too conditioned by a lifetime of being told her place was to submit to pack authority. And underneath that, buried so deep she'd never acknowledged it, she'd believed on some level that maybe she had done something wrong. That saving those pups had been a transgression. That her compassion was a weakness that deserved correction. The conspiracy hadn't just manipulated the evidence. It had manipulated her understanding of herself. That realization was almost worse than the lies. Because it meant they'd stolen more than just her freedom or her reputation. They'd stolen her ability to trust her own judgment. Her belief that doing the right thing mattered. And Aiden, he'd been the instrument of that theft. She tried not to hate him for it. Tried to remember that he'd been deceived too. That he'd spent 3 years trying to make it right. That he loved her. But love felt very small compared to the wound that kept spreading the more she examined it. A knock at her study door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Ivy entered, looking worried. The young council member had become a close friend over the years, one of the few people Ella trusted completely. "You shouldn't be working this hard," Ivy said gently. "You're 6 months pregnant with twins. You need rest." "I need answers more than I need rest." Ella gestured to the files spread across her desk. "Did you know about any of this?" No, Ivy's answer was immediate. Honest. I was barely part of the pack when it happened. Just a junior wolf with no access to information. But Ella, she sat down across from her. Everyone's talking. About the hearing. About what might come out. And there are wolves who are scared. Scared of what? Of what it means. If you were innocent, if the entire case was fabricated, then everything we believe about justice, about the system, about how pack law works, Ivy trailed off. It means none of it is safe. That any of us could be next. They should be scared, Ella said coldly. Because that's exactly what it means. The system that destroyed me could destroy anyone. That's why Aiden and I reformed it. But some wolves are saying the Reformation was built on a lie too. That if your guilt was what motivated Aiden to change everything, and you were never guilty, Ivy stopped. They're questioning whether the reforms are valid. Whether we should return to the old ways. The irony was suffocating. The conspiracy had tried to destroy Ella to protect traditional authority. But in doing so, they'd enabled the very Reformation they feared. And now, exposing the full extent of their lies threatened to undermine that Reformation by making people question its foundations. The reforms are valid whether I was guilty or not, Ella said firmly. Because they're built on the principle that compassion matters. That wolf shouldn't be punished for having conscience. That truth should be transparent and power should be accountable. My guilt or innocence doesn't change those principles. I know that. You know that. But try explaining it to a pack member who's scared and confused and being told by traditionalists that this proves Reformation was a mistake. Ella closed her eyes. I'm so tired, Ivy. So tired of fighting. Of proving myself. Of justifying my existence to people who've already decided what they want to believe. Then don't fight. Ivy's voice was gentle. Let Aiden handle the hearing. Let him expose the truth. You don't owe the pack anything else. You've given enough. Have I? Ella's laugh was bitter. Because apparently I didn't give them satisfaction the first time. Apparently my suffering wasn't convincing enough, so they had to manufacture more. That's not your fault. Isn't it? I was too weak to question. Too compliant to demand answers. Too willing to accept that I deserved punishment. She opened her eyes, and Ivy saw the devastation there. I let them make me into a victim. And even now, even knowing the truth, I can't stop feeling like maybe I still deserved it somehow. Ella, no, I should go, Ella interrupted. Should leave this pack. Take the twins when they're born and disappear. Start somewhere new where no one knows what happened. Where I don't have to be the symbol of every injustice. Where I can just... Her voice broke. Where I can just exist without carrying everyone else's guilt. Is that what you want? Ivy asked carefully. I don't know what I want anymore. Ella's hand rested on her swollen belly. I thought I wanted justice. Wanted the truth to come out. But now that it has, she stopped. Now I just feel hollow. Like someone carved out everything that mattered and left just the shell. Ivy reached across the desk, took Ella's hand. You're not hollow. You're hurt. There's a difference. And hurt can heal, can it? Ella pulled her hand away. Because every time I think I've healed, someone tears the wound open again. The conspiracy. The exile. And now this, finding out it was all lies. How many times can you be destroyed before there's nothing left to rebuild? The question hung in the air, unanswered. Because neither of them knew. 2 days before the hearing, Haley came to see Ella. The young wolf who'd changed her vote 3 years ago, who'd been instrumental in the Reformation, looked nervous. Scared. I need to tell you something, Haley said without preamble. Before the hearing. Before it becomes public. Ella gestured for her to sit. What is it? I knew. The words came out rushed. Guilty. Not about the planted evidence. Not about the conspiracy. But I knew something was wrong with the case. The timeline didn't make sense. The evidence felt staged. And she took a shaking breath. I said nothing. Because I was afraid. Because speaking up would have made me a target. So I stayed quiet and let you be punished. Another knife. Another betrayal. Another person who'd chosen safety over truth. Why are you telling me this now? Ella's voice was carefully controlled. Because I can't live with it anymore. Can't stand at that hearing and pretend I was innocent. Can't watch Aiden expose everyone else while I hide my own guilt. Haley's eyes were wet. I don't expect forgiveness. I needed you to know, before it all comes out, that I failed you too. Ella should have been angry. Should have felt rage at yet another person who'd stood by while she suffered. Instead, she felt nothing. Just that same hollow exhaustion. Thank you for telling me, she said finally. That's it? Haley looked confused. You're not angry? I don't have the energy for anger anymore. Ella stood slowly. But Haley, when you testify at the hearing, and you will testify, I want you to tell the truth. All of it. No matter how it makes you look. Because that's the only way any of this means anything. Haley nodded, tears streaming down her face. I will. I promise. After she left, Ella stood alone in her study and wondered how many more confessions would come. How many more wolves would reveal their complicity. How many more times she'd have to absorb other people's guilt on top of her own pain. And she wondered, not for the first time, whether survival was worth this cost. The night before the hearing, Aiden tried one more time. He found Ella in the nursery they'd prepared for the twins. She was folding tiny clothes with mechanical precision, her face blank. Ella, he said softly from the doorway. She didn't look up. You should rest. Tomorrow will be difficult. I can't rest. Not when you won't even look at me. He stepped into the room. Please. Talk to me. Yell at me. Rage at me. Anything except this silence. What do you want me to say? She finally met his eyes. That I forgive you? That I understand? That 3 years of believing I deserved torture's fine because you didn't know better. No. I want you to, he stopped. I don't know what I want. I just know I can't lose you. Can't watch you slip away from me because of something I can't fix. You can't fix this, Aiden. That's what you need to understand. No amount of justice or reformation or public truth-telling will undo what was done. It's just she set down the tiny shirt she'd been folding. It's done. And we have to live with it. Together, he said desperately. We live with it together. That's what mates do. What partners do. Do they? Her smile was sad. Because right now, looking at you, all I see is the man who held the whip. Who signed the exile order. Who chose law over love when it mattered most. That's not fair. I didn't know life isn't fair. Her voice finally rose, emotion breaking through the careful control. Fair would have been you questioning the evidence. Fair would have been you trusting me over a system you knew was corrupt. Fair would have been you choosing me before I had to nearly die to earn that choice. The words hit like blows. You're right, Aiden said quietly. You're absolutely right. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that failure. But Ella, his voice broke. I need you to tell me there's still an us to save. That underneath the hurt and the betrayal and the justified anger, you still love me. Because if you don't, if this destroyed that, then nothing I do tomorrow matters. Ella looked at him for a long moment. At the man she'd built a life with. The father of her children. The partner who'd risked everything to reform a broken system. I do love you, she said finally. That's the worst part. I love you and I hate what you did, and I don't know how to reconcile those things. She gestured helplessly. I exist in this space between love and fury and exhaustion. And I don't know how to get out. Then we find a way together. Maybe. She turned back to the tiny clothes. Or maybe tomorrow destroys whatever's left. We'll see. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't reconciliation. but it was acknowledgement that something still existed between them. And for tonight, that had to be enough. The council chamber was packed, every seat filled, wolves standing along the walls, guards positioned at every entrance, not for security, but as witnesses. Because this hearing would be recorded in pack history, would become the moment everything either held together or fell apart. Aiden sat at the head of the council table, flanked by Liam on one side and the new council members on the other. His expression was carved from stone. Alpha King, not the broken man who'd begged his mate for forgiveness the night before. Ella sat in the front row of observers. Not at the council table, she'd refused that position. Refused to be part of the apparatus that would judge her own case. She wore simple clothes, her hands folded over her swollen belly, her face carefully blank. But anyone who looked closely could see the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers trembled slightly before she forced them still. Aiden began without ceremony. This hearing is called to review evidence in the case of Ella Hartley, prosecuted 3 years ago for harboring rogue wolves. New information has come to light that calls into question the validity of both charges brought against her. His voice carried across the silent chamber. What you're about to hear will be difficult, disturbing, and it will challenge everything this pack has believed about justice and authority. He gestured to Liam, who stood and began presenting evidence. The discrepancies in the border reports, the timeline that didn't align, the witness statements that contradicted each other when examined closely, Mara's testimony about the planted evidence, and finally, devastatingly, Zach's letter, read aloud in its entirety. With each piece of evidence, the chamber grew quieter, more tense. Wolves who'd believed in the system started to look uncertain, uncomfortable. Some glanced at Ella with dawning horror, others with guilt. A few, the traditionalists, the ones who'd resisted reformation from the start, looked calculating, like they were already planning how to use this revelation to their advantage. When Liam finished, Aiden called the first witness. Mara came forward, her face pale but determined. She repeated what she'd told Aiden in private, the double search, the pup appearing impossibly between sweeps, Marcus's insistence that they'd missed something. "Why didn't you speak up at the time?" a council member asked. "Because I was afraid." Mara's voice shook but held steady. "Afraid of Marcus. Afraid of losing my position. Afraid that no one would believe a junior patrol wolf over the council. So I stayed silent. And I've regretted it every day since." Next came the 3 other patrol wolves who'd been present. Their testimonies varied in detail, but aligned on the crucial point: the evidence had been staged. They'd known something was wrong, but said nothing. Each confession added weight to the suffocating truth. Then Aiden called Haley, the young wolf who'd changed her vote 3 years ago, who'd been instrumental in the Reformation, walked to the witness position with visible dread. "State your involvement," Aiden commanded. "I wasn't part of the patrol or the investigation," Haley began. "But I reviewed the case files as part of my council training. And I noticed," she swallowed hard. "I noticed inconsistencies. Things that didn't make sense. The timing of when the pup was supposedly found. The lack of evidence of long-term harboring. The way the testimonies felt rehearsed. And you said nothing," Aiden finished for her. "I said nothing." Tears streamed down Haley's face. "Because I was young and scared, and I convinced myself I must be wrong. That the council knew better than I did. That questioning them would make me a target. Her voice broke. So I watched an innocent woman be punished and told myself it wasn't my fault because I hadn't been directly involved." She turned to look at Ella directly. "I'm sorry. I know that's inadequate. I know it doesn't undo anything. But I'm so sorry." Ella's expression didn't change. She simply nodded once, acknowledgement, not forgiveness. The testimonies continued. 12 wolves in total. Some directly involved in fabricating evidence. Others who'd suspected but stayed silent. Each one adding another brick to the undeniable truth. Ella Hartley had been completely innocent. And the entire pack had participated in her destruction, either actively or through cowardice. Then came the moment that changed everything. Aiden stood to present his final piece of evidence. But before he could speak, a voice called out from the back of the chamber. "I have information relevant to this hearing." Everyone turned. An elderly wolf named Aaron, one of the traditionalists who'd opposed Reformation from the start, stood slowly. His expression was grave. "Speak," Aiden commanded. Aaron walked to the front, his movements deliberate. "Everything presented here today is true. Ella Hartley was innocent. The evidence was fabricated. The conspiracy was real." He paused. "But there's something none of these witnesses have mentioned. Something crucial." The chamber held its breath. Elder Margaret, one of the council members who fled rather than testify, she kept records. Detailed records of every conspiracy meeting, every decision, every manipulation. Aaron produced a leather journal from his coat. "I found this in her abandoned quarters. And it contains information that goes beyond Ella Hartley's case." He opened the journal. The conspiracy wasn't just about testing the Alpha King's loyalty. It was about systematically removing anyone who threatened traditional authority. Ella was just the first. There were plans for others. Lists of wolves who were too progressive, too questioning, too dangerous to the old order. He held up a page. 53 names. Wolves who were marked for elimination through fabricated charges, arranged accidents, or forced exile. The conspiracy wasn't an isolated incident. It was a purge that was interrupted when the Alpha Kings started investigating. Horror rippled through the chamber. "Let me see that," Aiden demanded. Aaron handed over the journal. Aiden scanned the pages, his expression growing darker with every line. Then he looked up at the assembled pack. 17 of the names on this list are sitting in this chamber right now. Gasps. Shocked murmurs. Wolves looking at each other with dawning fear. The conspiracy against Ella Hartley was a test case, Aiden continued, his voice tight with controlled rage. They chose her because she was close enough to me to matter, but not important enough politically to cause immediate upheaval. If they could destroy her without consequence, if they could make the Alpha King himself be their weapon, then they could eliminate anyone. He slammed the journal on the table. "This isn't just about one miscarriage of justice. This is about a systematic attempt to control this pack through fear and manipulation. To eliminate anyone who dared question authority. To maintain power by destroying anyone who threatened it." The chamber erupted. Voices raised in shock, anger, fear. The council members looked at each other, some with horror, others with the dawning realization of just how deep the corruption had run. Through it all, Ella sat motionless. Her expression hadn't changed. She'd absorbed the revelation that she'd been part of a larger purge with the same hollow calm she'd maintained throughout the hearing. Because what did it matter? Whether she'd been the only target or one of 53, the result was the same. She'd been destroyed by wolves who'd claimed to be protecting the pack. Aiden called for order. It took several minutes for the chamber to quiet enough for him to continue. "We need to address the immediate question," he said once silence returned. "Every wolf named in this journal needs protection, needs to know they were targeted. And every wolf involved in the conspiracy, whether directly or through complicity, needs to answer for their actions. What about restitution?" A voice called from the crowd. Nathan, the older wolf who'd lost his son to the blood plague, who'd been one of the first to support Reformation. Ella Hartley suffered for 3 years based on fabricated charges. She was whipped, exiled, nearly killed. What justice exists for that? That's not for me to decide, Aiden said. That's for her to decide. Every eye in the chamber turned to Ella. She stood slowly, her pregnant belly making the movement awkward. For a long moment, she just looked at the assembled wolves, the ones who'd testified, the ones who'd stayed silent, the ones who'd participated, the ones who'd simply stood by and let it happen. You want to know what justice looks like? Her voice was quiet, but carried perfectly in the silent chamber. Let me tell you what it doesn't look like. It doesn't look like revenge. It doesn't look like executing everyone involved. It doesn't look like tearing down everything we've built because the foundation was rotten. She took a breath. I spent 3 years believing I deserved punishment. Believing I'd broken sacred law and paid the appropriate price. And in some terrible way, that belief gave me peace. Because at least I understood the rules. At least I knew why I was suffering. But now, she gestured at the evidence spread across the council table. Now I know there were no rules. No justice. Just wolves who decided I was convenient to destroy. And that knowledge, her voice finally showed emotion. That knowledge is worse than any whip. Because it means none of it mattered. Every moment of pain, every day of exile, every night I spent believing I was a criminal, all of it was for nothing except to serve someone else's political agenda. The chamber was deathly silent. So what do I want? Ella continued. I want every wolf involved to stand up right now. Every person who planted evidence, who lied in testimony, who knew the truth and said nothing. Stand up. Let everyone see you. For a moment, no one moved. Then slowly, painfully, wolves began to rise. Mara, the 3 patrol wolves. Haley, 2 former council members. A guard who'd helped stage the evidence. Another who'd altered the border reports. More stood. And more. Until 12 wolves were on their feet, facing the pack's collective judgment. Look at them, Ella commanded the assembled pack. Look at the faces of wolves who chose their own comfort over truth. Who destroyed an innocent pack member to protect their positions. Who let fear make them into monsters. She turned to Aiden. And look at the Alpha King. The man who held the whip. Who signed the exile orders. Who believed the system was sound because questioning it would have cost him something. Aiden's face went pale, but he didn't look away. Everyone in this chamber is guilty, Ella said. Some actively. Some through cowardice. Some just through the passive acceptance of a system that allowed this to happen. So you want justice? Here it is. You all have to live with what you did. Have to wake up every morning knowing you participated in or enabled the torture of an innocent wolf. Have to face your children and explain why you chose safety over courage. That's not justice, someone called out. That's just guilt. Exactly. Ella's smile was terrible. Because guilt is appropriate. Guilt is what you should feel. And if carrying that guilt makes you better wolves, makes you question authority, makes you speak up when something feels wrong, makes you choose courage over comfort, then maybe something good comes from this disaster. What about the ones who fled? Another voice asked. Margaret and the others who ran instead of facing judgment? Let them run, Ella said. Let them spend the rest of their lives as rogues. That's punishment enough. And restitution? Compensation? Formal apology. Ella laughed, hollow, broken. What restitution exists for 3 years of torture? What compensation for believing you deserved punishment? What apology makes being whipped publicly acceptable? She shook her head. There is no restitution adequate to this crime. So I'm not asking for it. Then what are you asking for? Aiden's question came out hoarse. Ella turned to face him fully. I'm asking for the truth to be recorded. Officially. In pack history. That Ella Hartley was innocent of all charges. That she was the victim of a conspiracy. That every punishment inflicted on her was based on lies. I want that recorded so thoroughly, so completely, that no one, now or in the future, can ever question it. Done, Aiden said immediately. And I'm asking, her voice finally broke completely. I'm asking for everyone to leave me alone. To stop making me the symbol of every injustice. To stop expecting me to be strong or forgiving or gracious about being destroyed. Tears streamed down her face now. I just want to exist without carrying everyone else's guilt on top of my own pain. The vulnerability of it, the raw, desperate plea for peace, silenced every voice that might have protested. Is that all? Aiden asked gently. No, Ella wiped her face. One more thing. A new law. A reform to the Reformation. Any wolf who notices inconsistencies in evidence, who suspects manipulation, who has any reason to question official charges, they are required to speak up. Required to report their concerns. And they are protected absolutely from any retaliation. Make silence complicity. Make questioning authority not just acceptable but mandatory. The Hartley provision, Liam said. A law requiring transparency and protecting whistleblowers. Yes, Ella's voice steadied. So that no one else ever has to endure what I endured because wolves were too afraid to question. Aiden looked at the council. All in favor? Every hand rose. Unanimous. The Hartley provision is now pack law, Aiden declared. Effective immediately. And Ella's testimony will be recorded as official pack history, with her full exoneration documented for all future generations. He paused. Is there anything else you need? Ella looked at him for a long moment. At the man she loved and couldn't forgive. At the partner who'd tried so hard to make things right, but couldn't undo what had been done. I need time, she said finally. Away from this chamber. Away from testimony and judgment and everyone's need to process their guilt through me. I need time. Take all the time you need, Aiden said. The pack will give you space. I'll make sure of it. She nodded once, then turned and walked out of the chamber. And Aiden watched her go, understanding with perfect clarity that some wounds were too deep for justice to heal. That truth wasn't enough when it came too late. That he'd won the battle for her exoneration and lost something infinitely more precious in the process. Do you understand what just happened? This wasn't a triumphant moment. This wasn't justice bringing relief. This was truth arriving like a funeral, necessary but devastating. Ella got everything she should have wanted, full exoneration, public acknowledgement, a new law in her name. But none of it gives her back what was stolen. None of it makes the suffering worthwhile. That's what happens when truth comes too late. It doesn't heal. It just exposes how deep the wound really goes. After the hearing, Ella disappeared. Not literally, she couldn't, not while 6 months pregnant with twins. But she withdrew to the private quarters she'd been using since distancing herself from Aiden, and she refused all visitors. The pack, true to Aiden's word, gave her space. But that space felt less like respect and more like abandonment. Like everyone was so uncomfortable with her pain that they'd rather pretend she didn't exist than face what had been done to her. Ivy tried to visit. Ella turned her away. Haley left notes of apology outside her door. Ella didn't read them. The council requested her input on implementing the Hartley provision. Ella sent back a single word. No, she was drowning. Sinking. And everyone was so busy processing their own guilt that no one noticed she was disappearing. Except Aiden. He noticed. Watched from a distance. Didn't approach because she'd asked for space and he owed her at least that much. But he noticed. And he worried. Because Ella wasn't just withdrawing. She was fading. Like the truth had broken something so fundamental that she didn't know how to exist anymore. And he didn't know how to save her when he was the one who destroyed her in the first place. 3 days after the hearing, everything changed. Ella went into early labor. She was alone when the contractions started, fierce, sudden, weeks too soon. She tried to call for help, but the pain stole her breath. She tried to reach the door, but her legs gave out. She collapsed on the floor of her quarters, surrounded by the tiny clothes she'd been folding, and felt panic surge alongside the pain. Too early. The twins were coming too early. Something was wrong. The door burst open. Aiden. He must have been nearby. Must have heard her fall or sensed something through the mate bond they'd both been trying to ignore. Ella. He was at her side immediately, hands gentle despite his obvious terror. The healers all get no time. She gasped out the words between contractions. Coming now. Too fast. Something's wrong. And she saw in his eyes that he knew it too. Knew that this birth, these children conceived in love, but gestating through revelation and betrayal, they were coming into a world that wasn't ready for them. Into a family that was broken. Into a love story that truth had shattered. I've got you, Aiden said. I've got you. You're not alone. But she was. They both were. Because some chasms are too wide for even love to bridge. And they were about to bring two innocent lives into that impossible space. The healers arrived within minutes, Kian leading them, his face grave when he assessed Ella's condition. The stress, he said quietly to Aiden while two other healers worked to stabilize Ella. Her body's been under too much emotional strain. The hearing, the revelations, the trauma resurfacing, it triggered early labor. Can you stop it? Aiden demanded. I don't think we should try. The twins are developed enough to survive, but barely. If we stop the labor now, the stress might trigger it again later under worse conditions. Better to deliver now with full medical support. It's too early, Ella gasped between contractions. They're not ready. I'm not, you are. Aiden gripped her hand. She didn't pull away, couldn't, in her current state. You're the strongest person I know. You can do this. I can't. Tears streamed down her face. I can't bring them into this. Into us being broken. Into a pack that destroyed their mother. They deserve better. They deserve. Another contraction cut off her words, and she screamed, not just from physical pain, but from the weight of everything that had been building for days. The truth. The betrayal. The impossible burden of loving someone who'd been weaponized against you. Everyone out, Kian commanded the other healers. Except those I need for the delivery. This room needs to be calm. The extra healers filed out, leaving just Kian, his assistant Kara, and Aiden. You too, Ella said to Aiden through gritted teeth. I don't want you here. The words were a knife. But Aiden stayed. I'm not leaving. You can hate me. You can rage at me. But I'm not leaving you to do this alone. I am alone. Her voice broke. That's what you don't understand. I've been alone since the moment that whip touched my back. Since the moment you chose law over trust. Since the moment you made me into a lesson about pack order. Ella, don't. Another contraction. Harder. Kian checked her progress, his expression concerned. The first twin is in position, he announced. But the second one, he paused. The second one is breach. We're going to have complications. How bad? Aiden asked, though he already knew from Kian's tone that the answer was very bad. Manageable if everything goes perfectly. Dangerous if it doesn't. Kian met Ella's eyes. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Trust. The word was bitter. But Ella nodded because what choice did she have? The next hour was agony. The first twin, a girl, came quickly once the labor progressed. She was small, underweight, but her lungs were strong. Her cry filled the room, fierce and demanding. Healthy, Kara announced, wrapping the baby carefully. Underweight but stable. One down. One to go. But the second twin, a boy, was stubborn. Breech and tangled in the cord. Every time Ella pushed, his heart rate dropped dangerously. "We need to do a manual extraction," Kian said grimly. "It's going to hurt. Worse than natural birth." "But if we don't do it," Ella gasped. "Just save him. Please." What followed was brutal. Kian had to manually reposition the baby, untangle the cord, guide him out while Ella screamed with pain that went beyond physical. Aiden held her hand through it all, absorbing the crushing grip that would have broken bones if he'd been human. And finally, the second twin emerged. Silent. Blue. Not breathing. "No," Ella whispered. "No, no, no," Kian worked quickly. Cleared the airway. Rubbed the tiny chest. Breathed air into miniature lungs. Nothing. "Come on," Kian muttered. "Come on, little one. Breathe." Aiden watched, helpless, as the healer worked on his son. As Ella sobbed. As the daughter they'd delivered safely cried from across the room, not understanding why her twin was silent. "Please," Ella begged. "Please don't take him. Not after everything. Please." And then a gasp. A cough. A thin, reedy cry. The boy breathed. Weak. Struggling. But breathing. "He's alive," Kian announced, relief evident in his voice. "Barely. He'll need intensive care. His lungs aren't fully developed and the cord trauma," he stopped. "But he's alive." Kara brought both babies to Ella. The daughter, strong and vocal. The son, frail and fighting. Ella held them against her chest, tears streaming down her face. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "They're perfect." Aiden looked at his children, at the daughter with her mother's dark hair and his golden eyes, at the son who was so small it seemed impossible he could survive. And he felt something break and reform in his chest simultaneously. These children were born into chaos, into a family fractured by lies and betrayal, into a love that truth had nearly destroyed. But they were alive. Both of them. Despite everything. "Names," Kian said gently. "Have you chosen names?" Ella looked at Aiden. The first time she'd truly looked at him since the hearing. "Luna," she said quietly. "For our daughter. Because she came into this world fighting and fierce like the moon herself." "Perfect," Aiden agreed, his voice rough. "And our son." Ella looked down at the tiny, struggling boy. "Ash. Because he rose from the ashes of everything that tried to destroy us. And he's going to survive despite the odds." "Luna and Ash," Aiden repeated. "There," his voice broke. "They're miracles. They're proof that something good can come from terrible things," Ella corrected. She looked up at him, and he saw something shift in her expression. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. But acknowledgement. "Thank you for staying. For not leaving me alone through that." "I'll never leave you alone again," Aiden promised. "No matter what happens between us. You'll never face anything alone. Don't make promises you can't keep." "I'm not." He reached out carefully, touching Luna's tiny hand. She gripped his finger with surprising strength. "Whatever you decide, about us, about the pack, about everything, I'll respect it. But I'll always be here for them. And for you. Even if you can't stand to look at me." Ella didn't respond. Just held their children and let the tears fall silently. The pack learned of the twins' birth within hours. Wolves gathered outside the healing house, waiting for news. When word spread that both children had survived barely, in Ash's case, a cheer went up. But it was muted. Uncertain. Because everyone understood that this birth had happened in the aftermath of devastating revelations. That these children were born into a family that truth had fractured. Liam managed the political aspects. Announced the births officially. Fielded questions about the Alpha King's heirs. Made it clear that both mother and children needed privacy and rest. "How is she?" Ivy asked when Liam emerged from the healing house. "Physically?" "Recovering." The birth was traumatic, but she's stable. Liam's expression was grim. Emotionally? I don't know. He stopped. She's holding herself together through sheer will. But I don't know how long that can last. And Aiden? Terrified. He almost lost his son. Almost lost Ella to complications. And he knows, Liam's voice dropped. He knows that even the birth of his children, doesn't fix what's broken between them. What happens now? Haley had joined them, her young face worried. Now we give them time. Space. And we handle pack business so they can focus on healing. Liam looked at the two women. The Hartley provision needs to be implemented. The wolves from the conspiracy need to be monitored. And the traditionalists are already trying to use this chaos to undermine the Reformation. Let them try, Ivy said fiercely. We didn't come this far to let them tear it down now. Agreed. But we need to be smart about this. The pack is unstable. Questions are being raised about whether leadership built on lies, even unintentional ones, can be trusted. We need to show strength. Unity. Liam paused. Which is difficult when our Alpha King is barely holding himself together and our Queen has withdrawn from everything. The dilemma was impossible. The pack needed strong leadership. But their leaders were drowning in trauma and betrayal. Then we hold things together until they can, Haley said. The new council. Those of us who fought for reformation. We step up. We prove that this movement is bigger than any two wolves, even the ones who started it. It was brave. Idealistic. Probably impossible. But it was all they had. Inside the healing house, Ella sat in a private room holding Luna, while Aiden sat across from her holding Ash. The boy was connected to breathing tubes, his tiny chest rising and falling with mechanical assistance. He's so small, Aiden said softly. He'll grow. Kian says his lungs just need time to strengthen. Ella adjusted Luna, who'd fallen asleep after nursing. She took to feeding immediately. Strong like her father. The compliment, if it was one, surprised Aiden. She has your determination. I watched her fight her way into this world. They both fought. Ella looked at Ash. He almost didn't make it. But he did. Because he's stubborn like his mother. A ghost of a smile crossed Ella's face. Then faded. Aiden. We need to talk about what happens next. His stomach dropped. All right. I can't, she stopped. Started again. I can't pretend that the hearing didn't happen. That finding out everything I suffered was based on lies didn't fundamentally change how I see the world. How I see you. I know. But I also can't pretend that you weren't here when I needed you most. That you didn't hold my hand through the worst pain I've ever experienced. That you didn't help bring our children into this world. She met his eyes. So I'm stuck. Between hating what you did and loving who you are. Between wanting to leave and knowing I can't because of them. Aiden's heart clenched. What do you want to do? Ella's voice broke. I want to go back in time and change everything. I want the first punishment to never have happened. I want to have been believed instead of convicted. I want to not have spent 3 years thinking I deserved torture. But I can't have any of that. So I have to figure out how to move forward with what I have. Which is 2 children who need both their parents. A pack that needs stable leadership. And a mate who I love despite everything. She looked down at Luna. So here's what I'm proposing. We co-parent. We co-lead. We exist as partners in those roles. But the rest, the intimacy, the romance, the belief that we can just move past this, she shook her head. That has to wait. Maybe indefinitely. Maybe forever. I don't know yet. It was more than Aiden had dared hope for and less than he desperately wanted. I'll take whatever you're willing to give, he said. For as long as you need. And if forever is what it takes, then his voice roughened. Then I'll spend forever proving I'm worthy of a second chance. Don't. Ella's command was soft but firm. Don't make this about proving yourself. Don't turn our relationship into another reformation project. She sighed. Just be a good father. A good co-leader. A decent person. That's all I can handle right now. I can do that. Can you? Because being decent means respecting my boundaries. Means not pushing for more than I'm ready to give. Means accepting that I might never forgive you. Her eyes were fierce. Can you actually accept that? Or will you spend every day hoping I'll change my mind? The question was brutally honest. And Aiden knew his answer had to be equally honest. I'll hope, he admitted. Because I love you. Because I can't imagine a future where we're not fully together. But I won't push. Won't manipulate. Won't make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. You've earned the right to set every boundary you need. And I'll respect them. Even when it kills me. Ella studied him for a long moment. All right. Then we try this. Co-parenting. Co-leading. Nothing more until, if I'm ready. Thank you. The words were inadequate, but all he had. For giving me even this much. For not walking away completely. I'm not doing it for you. Her voice was cold again. I'm doing it for them. Because they deserve both parents. Because they shouldn't suffer for your mistakes. The words stung. But Aiden nodded acceptance. This was his reality now, existing in the same space as the woman he loved, raising children together, leading a pack together, but emotionally separated by a chasm that might never close. Some men might have rejected it, might have demanded more or walked away entirely. But Aiden had spent 3 years learning that love meant giving someone what they needed, not what you wanted. So he'd take the scraps Ella was willing to offer. And he'd pray that someday, maybe years from now, maybe never, she'd be able to look at him without seeing the man who'd held the whip. 2 weeks after the twins' birth, the pack held a naming ceremony. Traditionally, this was a celebration. A formal introduction of new pack members, especially heirs to leadership. Music, feasting, public blessing from the alpha and his mate. But this ceremony felt more like a funeral than a celebration. Aiden and Ella stood together on the platform, each holding a twin. They looked like the perfect family, strong alpha, beautiful mate, healthy children. But anyone who looked closely could see the distance between them. The way they didn't touch. The way Ella's smiles didn't reach her eyes. The way Aiden looked at her like a man starving in the presence of a feast he couldn't taste. Liam performed the ceremony, his voice carrying across the assembled pack. We gathered to welcome Luna and Ash into the northern pack. Children of our alpha king and queen. Heirs to leadership. Products of love forged through adversity. The words were traditional. Beautiful. And utterly false. Because everyone knew these children weren't products of love. They were products of trauma trying desperately to transform into something good. May they grow strong, Liam continued. May they lead with wisdom. May they embody the reformation their parents built. And may they never forget that truth matters more than comfort, that justice matters more than order, that courage matters more than safety. The blessing had been written by Ella. Aiden recognized her voice in every word. The pack accepts Luna and Ash's members. As heirs. As future leaders. Liam turned to Aiden and Ella. Do you, as parents, pledge to raise them with integrity? To teach them the values of the Reformation? To prepare them to lead a pack that values compassion as much as strength? We do, they said in unison. The only thing they'd been in unison about for weeks. The pack cheered. But it was hollow. Performative. Because everyone understood, this family was broken. These children were being raised by parents who could barely look at each other. This leadership was held together by duty, not love. And no one knew how long that could possibly last. After the ceremony, Ella escaped to the gardens as quickly as protocol allowed. She needed air. Space. Distance from the performance of normalcy she'd been maintaining for weeks. She was sitting on her usual bench, Luna sleeping in a sling against her chest when someone approached. Not Aiden. She would have recognized his scent, his presence. This was someone else. Someone who shouldn't be here. She looked up and froze. Elder Margaret stood before her. The council member who'd fled. Who'd kept detailed records of the conspiracy. Who should have been exiled, hunted, gone. "Hello, Ella," Margaret said calmly. As if she hadn't destroyed an innocent woman. As if she had any right to be here. "How did you get past the guards?" Ella demanded, her voice low so as not to wake Luna. "I have friends still in this pack. Wolves who believe the Reformation was a mistake. Who want to return to traditional values." Margaret sat down uninvited. "I'm here to make you an offer. I don't want anything from you. Not even the truth? The full truth about why you were chosen." Margaret's smile was cold. "Because there's something Zach didn't include in his confession. Something crucial." Despite herself, Ella hesitated. "What truth?" "The conspiracy wasn't random. We didn't just pick you because you were close to Aiden. We picked you because Margaret leaned closer. Because we knew about your bloodline. About what you really are." Ella's blood went cold. "What are you talking about?" "Your grandmother. Your mother's mother. She was moon-marked. True moon-marked like you. But she hid it her entire life. Suppressed her power. Lived as a normal Omega to avoid being targeted." Margaret's eyes glittered. "When we investigated you, we found her journals. Learned the truth. And we realized if you ever figured out what you were, if you ever accessed that power, you'd be unstoppable." The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. "I'm not moon-marked," Ella protested. "I'm just what? An Omega who survived torture that should have killed her? Who endured curses that destroyed most wolves? Who gave birth prematurely under extreme stress and both children survived?" Margaret laughed. "You're moon-marked, Ella. Your power has been protecting you all along. Keeping you alive through everything we did to you. And we knew if you ever realized it, if you ever learned to control it, you'd be more powerful than any Alpha King. More dangerous to traditional authority than any Reformation." Ella's mind reeled. "You're lying." "Am I? Then explain how you survived. Explain the silver eyes you hide with contact lenses. Explain why your daughter has them naturally gold and silver, hybrid of your power and Aiden's alpha blood. Explain why your son, weak as he is, survived a birth that should have killed him." "Stop." Ella's voice shook. "Just stop. I'm not here to torment you. I'm here to offer you a choice." Margaret's expression turned serious. "Leave. Take your children and disappear. We'll help you. Provide resources, protection, a new identity. All you have to do is abandon the Reformation. Let it collapse without your presence. Let the pack return to traditional values. And if I refuse, then we expose what you are. We tell the pack their queen is moon-marked, the same thing that got you tortured before. And we watch as everything you've built burns down around you. Because traditionalists fear moon-marked wolves more than they fear Reformation. Give them a reason to be terrified of you, and they'll turn on Aiden faster than you can imagine." The threat was elegant, devastating, and probably effective. "Why are you telling me this?" Ella demanded. "Why not just expose me now?" "Because I'm giving you a choice. Something we didn't give you before." Margaret stood. "You have 3 days to decide. Leave quietly or stay and watch everything burn. Either way, the Reformation dies. The only question is whether you go down with it." She disappeared into the gardens, leaving Ella alone with Luna and a revelation that changed everything. Again, Ella didn't tell Aiden about Margaret's visit. She should have. She knew that. Keeping secrets from her co-parent, her co-leader, was exactly the kind of thing that had enabled the conspiracy in the first place. But she couldn't. Not yet. Because if what Margaret said was true, if she was moo-marked, if her power had been protecting her all along, if her children carried that same dangerous gift, then everything changed again. And she was so tired of everything changing. For 2 days, she carried the secret like a stone in her chest. She went through the motions, feeding Luna and Ash, attending brief council meetings when necessary, maintaining the careful distance from Aiden that had become their new normal. But at night, alone in her quarters with the twins sleeping nearby, she looked at herself in the mirror and tried to see what Margaret claimed was there. Silver eyes. She'd always worn contacts, plain brown ones that matched her natural color. She'd never questioned why. Never thought it was anything except aesthetics. But now she removed them, looked at her reflection with naked eyes, and saw Silver staring back. Not the brown she remembered from childhood. Not the color she'd seen her entire life. But silver. Like moonlight. Like the moon wolf from ancient stories. Like moo-marked. No, she whispered to her reflection. No, this isn't possible. But even as she denied it, pieces clicked into place. The way she'd survived the cell when any normal wolf would have died. The way the curses in Part 1's story had been drawn to her like she was a magnet. The way Luna had been born with gold and silver eyes that the healers had called unusual but beautiful. The way Ash, fragile, struggling Ash, had survived a birth that should have killed him. They were moo-marked. Both of them. Carrying her bloodline's dangerous gift. And if the pack found out, if the traditionalists learned that their reformed queen and her children were the very thing they feared most, the Reformation would burn. Aiden would be destroyed. And her children would become targets before they could even walk. Ella sank to the floor, her back against the wall, and tried to breathe through the panic. She had 3 days. 3 days to decide whether to run or stay. 3 days to figure out if protecting her children meant abandoning everything she'd fought for. 3 days to choose between love and survival. Again. On the 3rd day, she made a decision. She was going to tell Aiden. Not because she trusted him, that was still too complicated. But because he deserved to know. Because their children deserved both parents to understand what they were facing. And because she couldn't carry this alone anymore. She found him in the nursery, holding Ash while Luna slept in her crib. The boy's breathing had improved significantly. He was off the mechanical assistance now, breathing on his own. Still small. Still fragile. But alive. "We need to talk," Ella said from the doorway. Aiden looked up, concern immediate on his face. "Is something wrong? Are you all right?" "No, nothing's all right. But you need to hear this." She closed the door behind her, checked that Luna was truly asleep, then took a breath. "Margaret came to see me 3 days ago." Aiden's expression went from concerned to furious in an instant. "Margaret was here? In pack territory? Why didn't you?" He stopped. "Why didn't you tell me immediately?" "Because what she told me, I needed time to process it. To verify it." Ella met his eyes. "She told me I'm moo-marked. That my grandmother was moo-marked and hid it her entire life. That the conspiracy targeted me not just because I was close to you, but because they knew what I was. What I could become if I ever accessed my power." The words hung in the air like smoke. Aiden stared at her. That can't be true. You would know. You would have shifted differently, shown signs. I did show signs. I just didn't recognize them." Ella gestured to her face. "My eyes. They're naturally silver. I've been wearing brown contacts since I was a teenager because my mother insisted. Said it was safer." I thought she meant aesthetically safer. But she meant, her voice broke. She meant it would keep me hidden. Keep me from being identified as moo-marked and targeted. "Ella, look at Luna," she interrupted. "Really look at her eyes. They're not just gold like yours. They're gold-silver. Hybrid. And Ash, she looked at the tiny boy in Aiden's arms. He survived a birth that should have killed him. That's not luck. That's power. Moo-marked power that he inherited from me. Aiden looked down at his son, at the daughter sleeping peacefully, and recognition dawned in his expression. Gods, he breathed. It's true. It's true. Which means Margaret has leverage. She knows. And she's threatening to expose me, expose all of us, unless I leave. Unless I abandon the Reformation and take the children somewhere far away where traditionalists can't use us to destroy everything you've built. No, Aiden's response was immediate. Fierce. No, we don't negotiate with people like Margaret. We don't let them dictate our choices. Even if staying means destroying the Reformation, even if it means our children become targets. Ella's voice rose. You don't understand what moo-marked means to traditionalists. They fear it more than rogues, more than any external threat. If they learn I'm moo-marked, that our children are moo-marked, they'll tear the pack apart trying to eliminate us. Then we fight them. With what? Ella demanded. A pack that's barely holding together? A Reformation built on trust that's already fractured? We can't fight a fear that's been ingrained for generations. We've fought worse. Aiden carefully placed Ash in his crib, then turned to face Ella fully. We've survived conspiracies and exile and lies that nearly destroyed us both. We can survive this. Maybe you can. But I'm not sure I want to. The admission came out quiet. Broken. I'm so tired, Aiden. Tired of being the symbol everyone fears or hates or wants to use. Tired of fighting battles I didn't ask for. Tired of, she gestured helplessly. Tired of all of it. Maybe Margaret's right. Maybe the kindest thing I can do for everyone is disappear. No, Aiden crossed to her, and for the first time in weeks, he touched her deliberately, hands on her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. You don't get to give up. Not now. Not after everything we've survived. Why not? Her eyes blazed. Give me one good reason why I should stay and fight instead of taking my children somewhere safe. Because running means they win. Means everything you suffered, everything we built, everything we changed, it all gets undone. The pack returns to traditional values. The Hartley provision gets repealed. And the next wolf who shows compassion, who questions authority, who dares to be different, they get destroyed just like you were. Except there won't be anyone left to fight for reformation, to demand better, to prove that change is possible. That's not my responsibility. But her voice wavered. No, it's not. You've earned the right to walk away, to choose safety over struggle. Aiden's grip tightened. But I know you, Ella. I know you can't stand the thought of someone else enduring what you endured. Can't abandon the wolves who believed in reformation. Can't let our children grow up thinking that running is the answer when the world gets hard. So what? I stay and fight and watch my children become targets? Watch the pack tear itself apart over fear of what we are. You stay and we face it together. Openly. Honestly. We tell the pack the truth before Margaret can weaponize it. We own what you are, what our children are, and we dare anyone to make it a problem. The audacity of it took her breath away. That's insane. Probably. But it's also the only way forward that doesn't involve living in fear for the rest of our lives. He released her shoulders, but didn't step back. Margaret gave you 3 days to decide. How much time is left? It's been 3 days. She'll be expecting an answer. Then let's give her one. Together. As partners. As leaders. As parents who refuse to let our children inherit a world built on fear. Ella wanted to argue. Wanted to point out all the ways this could go wrong. Wanted to protect herself and her children from the inevitable fallout. But Aiden was right about one thing. She couldn't stand the thought of another wolf suffering what she'd suffered. Couldn't abandon the reformation that had given so many wolves hope. couldn't teach her children that hiding was safer than fighting. If we do this, she said slowly, if we tell the pack I'm moon-marked, we do it my way. On my terms. No surprises. No political manipulation. Just truth. Raw and complete and undeniable. Agreed. What do you need? I need, she stopped. Thought. I need to understand what I am. What this power is. What it means for our children. I can't ask the pack to accept something I don't understand myself. Then we find out. Together. Tonight. Before Margaret can act. They went to the temple in the northern forest, the same one where the moon's spirits had appeared in part 1. Where Ella had been transformed. Where everything had changed the first time. It was after midnight. The twins were with Kian, who'd agreed to watch them with no questions asked. The pack was asleep, and the moon was full, casting silver light across the ancient stones. Ella stood in the center of the altar, Aiden beside her, and called out to the beings who'd blessed her once before. I need answers, she said to the empty air. I need to understand what I am, what my children are. Please. If you're real, if you're listening, help me. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the air shimmered. The moonlight intensified. And 3 figures materialized, the same moon spirits who'd appeared 3 years ago. Daughter, the central spirit said. Her voice was warmth and inevitability. We wondered when you would come. You knew. Ella demanded. You knew I was moon-marked and you never told me? We do not reveal what wolves are not ready to hear. You needed to find your strength first. To survive the trials that would break a lesser soul. To prove that power without wisdom is dangerous. The spirit drifted closer. But now you are ready. Ready for what? To understand your gift. To claim your birthright. To become what you were always meant to be. The spirit gestured, and suddenly Ella could see, truly see, the power that had been protecting her. Silver light beneath her skin, pulsing with every heartbeat, woven through her bones, concentrated in her eyes, her hands, her core. Moon-marked power. Ancient. Vast. Terrifying. This has been inside me the whole time, she whispered. Yes. Dormant until you needed it. Protecting you through trials that would have killed any normal wolf. Healing you faster than should be possible. Shielding you from the worst effects of the curses in part 1 story. The spirit's smile was gentle. You survived not because you were strong. You survived because you were chosen. Chosen for what? To lead. To transform. To show wolf packs everywhere that there is another way. That power can be used for healing instead of domination. That being different is not the same as being dangerous. And my children? Carry your gift. Diluted by their father's alpha blood, but present. Luna will be strong, a warrior with both alpha authority and moon-marked compassion. She will lead with a balance rarely seen. The spirit turned to look in the direction of the capital, as if seeing through walls to where Ash slept. Your son, Ash, he is more complicated. What do you mean? Aiden asked, speaking for the first time. He carries more of the moon-marked power than his sister. But his body is weak. The power and the vessel are mismatched. He will struggle. Will need protection. Will face challenges that would break most wolves. The spirit's voice softened. But if he survives, if he learns to harness what he carries, he will be the most powerful moon-marked wolf in 1,000 years. The prediction was devastating and hopeful in equal measure. How do I protect them? Ella asked. How do I keep them safe when half the pack fears what they are? By claiming your power openly. By showing the pack what moon-marked really means. By proving that fear is learned and can be unlearned. The spirit raised her arms, and suddenly silver light poured from her hands into Ella. I give you full access now. To the power your grandmother suppressed. To the gifts your mother hid. To everything you were always meant to be. The power hit Ella like a tidal wave. She gasped, fell to her knees, felt it flood through every cell. Burning, transforming, awakening parts of herself she'd never known existed. When it faded, she stood different. Not physically, but fundamentally. She could feel the power at her command now. Could sense the life force of every living thing around her. Could see threads of connection between herself and Aiden, herself and her children, herself and the pack. She was moon-marked. Fully. Undeniably. And terrifying as it was, it felt right. The pack will fear this, she said to the spirits. Yes, some will. But others will see hope. Will recognize that power used with wisdom is protection, not threat. And those wolves, the ones who choose understanding over fear, they will build the future your children deserve. And if the traditionalists try to destroy us, then you defend yourself, your children, your mate, your pack. The spirit's voice turned hard. You are moon-marked, daughter. You were not made to cower. You were made to stand. The spirits began to fade. But before they disappeared completely, the central one spoke once more. One more thing. The lie that destroyed you, it came too late to prevent your suffering. But it came in time to prevent your children's. Use that. Let the truth that broke you become the shield that protects them. And trust, the spirit smiled. Trust that some wounds heal stronger than they were before breaking. Then they were gone. And Ella stood in the moonlight, power thrumming through her veins, and understood she wasn't going to run, wasn't going to hide, wasn't going to let her children inherit a world that punished difference. She was going to stand and fight and dare anyone to make her power into a problem, even if it destroyed her, even if it destroyed everything. She was done being a victim. They returned to the capital at dawn. Ella walked differently now, stood taller, moved with the confidence of someone who'd stopped apologizing for existing. Aiden noticed. You're different. I'm myself. Finally. Completely. She looked at him. I'm going to call an emergency pack gathering. Today. And I'm going to tell them everything. That I'm moon-marked. That our children are moon-marked. That the conspiracy targeted me not just for political reasons, but because they feared what I could become. The pack will panic. Some will. Others won't. And the ones who can't accept it, her eyes flashed silver. They can leave. I'm done living in fear of people who've already decided to hate me. Done letting their prejudice dictate my life. Done protecting them from the truth. Margaret will use this. Will try to turn the panic into violence. Let her try. Ella's smile was dangerous. I'm not the helpless Omega she destroyed 3 years ago. I'm not the broken exile who came back begging for acceptance. I'm moon-marked. Powerful. Protected by the moon herself. And anyone who tries to hurt my children is going to learn exactly what that means. The transformation was complete. The victim had become the warrior. And Aiden, looking at his mate radiant with power and purpose, felt something shift in his chest. Not just love. He'd always loved her. But respect. Deep, odd respect for someone who'd been destroyed repeatedly and still chose to stand. I'm with you, he said simply. Whatever happens. However the pack reacts. I'm with you. I know. She touched his face, the first deliberate, gentle touch since the hearing. And that matters more than you know. But Aiden, her expression softened slightly. This doesn't fix us. Doesn't erase what was done. Doesn't make the betrayal hurt less. I know. But maybe, she hesitated. Maybe it's a start. Towards something different. Not what we were, but what we could be. If we're both brave enough. It was the most hope she'd offered in weeks. And Aiden took it like a drowning man grabbing a rope. I'll be brave enough, he promised. For you. For them. For us. I'll be whatever you need. Then stand with me today. When I tell the pack what I am. When some of them inevitably turn against me. When everything we've built gets tested one more time. She met his eyes. Stand with me. Not as the alpha king trying to protect his mate, but as my equal. My partner. She stopped. Couldn't quite say the word mate yet, but he heard it anyway. Always, Aiden said. I'll always stand with you. And for the first time since the truth came out, Ella believed him. The emergency pack gathering was called for noon. Word spread fast. The queen had demanded every wolf's presence. Mandatory. No exceptions. The pack assembled in the great hall, confused and anxious. Rumors swirled. Was there another conspiracy? Had Margaret returned? Were the twins sick? No one guessed the truth. Ella stood at the front of the hall, Aiden beside her. No council flanking them. No guards as barriers. Just the two of them facing their pack. And for once, Ella didn't look scared. Didn't look broken. She looked dangerous. 3 years ago, she began without preamble. I was punished for a crime I didn't commit. 6 weeks ago, you learned the truth, that I was innocent, that I was framed, that the conspiracy used me to test your Alpha King's loyalty. And I know many of you have been processing that revelation. Struggling with guilt. Questioning everything you believed about justice. The hall was silent. Attentive. Today, I'm going to give you another truth to process. One that will likely frighten you. Anger you. Make you question whether I should be your queen. She took a breath. I am moonmarked. The words hung in the air for one frozen moment. Then the hall erupted. Shouts of disbelief. Fear. Anger. Wolves rising from their seats. Guards moving toward the platform, not sure if they should protect Ella or restrain her. Aiden raised his hand, alpha command flowing through the gesture. The hall slowly quieted. Let her speak, he ordered. Ella continued, her voice cutting through the remaining murmurs. My grandmother was moonmarked. She hid it her entire life. My mother knew. And she gestured to her face. I've been wearing colored contacts since I was a teenager to hide my silver eyes. To avoid being identified. To stay safe. She removed the contacts, right there in front of the entire pack. Silver eyes blazed in her face. Unmistakable. Undeniable. Moonmarked. More gasps. More fear. The conspiracy that destroyed me, they knew. They targeted me not just because I was close to Aiden, but because they feared what I would become if I ever accessed my power. And they were right to fear it. Silver light flickered around her hands. Because I am powerful. More powerful than they imagined. And my children, her voice strengthened. My children carry this gift. Luna and Ash are moonmarked. Hybrids of their father's alpha blood and my ancient power. And they will grow to be stronger than any of us can imagine. This is an abomination. A voice shouted from the crowd, one of the traditionalists. Moonmarked wolves are dangerous. Unstable. They've destroyed packs throughout history. No, Ella's response was firm. Moonmarked wolves have been destroyed throughout history. Killed by packs who feared what they didn't understand. Murdered by traditionalists who valued order over truth. And you want to know the real danger? It's not the power. It's the fear. Fear makes you destroy innocent wolves. Fear makes you enable conspiracies. Fear makes you into the very monsters you claim to be protecting against. You're asking us to accept a threat in our midst, another voice called. To trust someone who could kill us all with a thought. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm telling you I exist. And that I'm not going anywhere. And that my children will be raised here, in this pack, with full knowledge of what they are and full training in how to control it. She looked across the assembled wolves. But I'm also giving you a choice. If you cannot accept a moonmarked queen and moonmarked heirs, if your fear is too great, then leave. Now, find another pack. One that values traditional hierarchy over reformation. One that would rather destroy difference than learn from it. The ultimatum was clear. Stay and accept. Or leave and retain your prejudice. This is manipulative, someone shouted. You're forcing us to choose between our home and our safety. No. I'm forcing you to choose between fear and growth. Between clinging to prejudice or building something better. Between being wolves who destroy what they don't understand or wolves who have the courage to question their own assumptions. Ella's voice rang across the hall. The choice has always been yours. I'm just making it explicit. Silence fell. Heavy. Charged with tension that could ignite into violence at any moment. Then, slowly, Haley stood. I choose growth, she said clearly. I choose questioning my assumptions. I choose accepting that our queen is moon-marked and trusting that she'll use that power for good, just like she's used everything else she's survived to build something better. Nathan stood next. I choose reformation. I choose a pack that doesn't destroy difference. I choose staying. One by one, wolves stood. Not all of them. Maybe 2/3. But enough. Enough to show that reformation had taken root deeper than fear. Enough to prove that some wolves valued courage over comfort. Enough to protect Ella and her children from the ones who couldn't accept what they were. But the third who remained seated, the traditionalists, the fearful, the ones who'd never truly accepted reformation, they looked at Ella with naked hatred. And she knew this wasn't over. The battle for her children's future had just begun. The division was immediate and absolute. Within hours of Ella's revelation, the pack had physically separated. 2/3 remained in the capital, pledging loyalty to their moon-marked queen and the Reformation. The remaining third, led by the most vocal traditionalists, established a camp at the southern border. Not quite leaving. Not quite staying. Just waiting. They're planning something, Liam reported to Aiden and Ella in the private study. The southern camp has been receiving visitors. Wolves from neighboring packs. Traditionalist leaders who oppose reformation. How many? Aiden asked. 15 so far. All from packs that refuse to join our movement. All known for strict hierarchical structures. Liam's expression was grim. They're building a coalition. Against me, Ella said flatly. Not a question. Against the idea of moon-marked leadership. They're calling it a threat to wolf pack stability across the entire region. Saying that if one pack accepts moon-marked authority, others will be pressured to follow. That it sets a dangerous precedent. So they want me gone. Dead, preferably. Exiled at minimum. Ella's voice was eerily calm. They want the Reformation undone, Liam corrected. You're just the most visible symbol. Remove you, and they believe everything collapses back to traditional values. They're not entirely wrong, Aiden admitted. The Reformation is built on the principle that difference should be valued, not destroyed. Ella being moo-marked, and us openly accepting that, it's the ultimate test of whether we actually believe what we preach. And if we fail the test? Ella asked. Then Reformation dies. Not just here, but everywhere. Every pack watching this will learn that progressive values only matter until they become inconvenient. That acceptance has limits. That some differences are still too dangerous to tolerate. The weight of it pressed down on all of them. What are our options? Ella asked. We negotiate, Liam suggested. Find a compromise. Maybe you step back from visible leadership for a time. Let tensions cool. Return when no, Ella's interruption was firm. I'm not hiding again. Not diminishing myself to make others comfortable. Not teaching my children that their power is something to be ashamed of. Then we prepare for conflict, Aiden said quietly. The traditionalists won't leave peacefully. They'll push. Test boundaries. Eventually force a confrontation that ends in either their removal or ours. Civil war, Liam said what they were all thinking. within the pack, and possibly beyond if those neighboring packs get involved. Over me. Ella's laugh was bitter. 3 years ago, I was punished for harboring a pup. Now I'm going to be the cause of a war. The irony is suffocating. You're not the cause, Aiden corrected. Fear is the cause. Prejudice is the cause. Wolves who can't accept that the world is changing, they're the cause. You're just the excuse. That distinction won't matter much if wolves die fighting over whether I deserve to exist. Before anyone could respond, a knock interrupted them. Ivy entered, her face pale. We have a problem. Margaret is in the southern camp. She arrived an hour ago with the young council member hesitated. With 3 elders from the High Council. The room went silent. The High Council, the governing body that had validated their reformation 6 months ago. The authority that superseded any individual pack. Why? Aiden demanded. The High Council doesn't intervene in internal pack politics unless there's a threat to regional stability, Liam finished. And Margaret just handed them one. A moo-marked queen and moo-marked heirs in a pack that's already fractured. She's probably arguing that we're on the verge of collapse. That intervention is necessary to prevent chaos. What kind of intervention? Ella asked, though she already knew the answer. Removal of leadership. Installation of interim authority. Forced restructuring back to traditional values. Ivy's voice shook. They could dissolve everything we've built. Remove both of you. Take the children into, she couldn't finish. Into High Council custody, Ella completed. To be raised away from moon-marked influence. To be trained to suppress their power instead of embrace it. The thought of Luna and Ash being taken, raised by wolves who feared what they were, taught to hate their own gifts, it was unbearable. They can't do that, Aiden said. The High Council validated our reformation. They don't have grounds to, they do if they determine the pack is unstable. If they decide that moon-marked leadership poses a regional threat. If Margaret convinces them that we're dangerous. Liam's expression was grave. And she has 3 days of evidence to support her case. Our pack is literally divided. We're on the brink of internal conflict. And our queen just revealed she's the thing most traditionalists fear above all else. So what do we do? Ivy asked. Aiden looked at Ella. We request an audience with the High Council. Present our case before Margaret can poison them completely against us. Show them that the division isn't caused by your power, it's caused by fear of change. And that bowing to that fear would be a betrayal of everything Reformation stands for. They won't care about Reformation, Ella said quietly. They care about stability. Order. Preventing chaos. And right now, I'm chaos incarnate. Then we make them see that traditional order was the real chaos. That it enabled conspiracies and corruption and the destruction of innocent wolves. That Reformation, even with its growing pains, is still better than what came before. And if they don't agree? If they rule against us? Aiden's jaw set. Then we refuse. We secede from High Council authority if necessary. Become an independent pack. Allied with the 17 others who've joined Reformation. That would mean war, Liam warned. The High Council won't tolerate open defiance. They'll send enforcers. Make an example of us. Let them try. Aiden's voice was steel. I've spent 3 years learning that some things are worth fighting for. That compromise with fear only enables more fear. That standing up for what's right sometimes means risking everything. He looked at Ella. But this is your choice too. Your life. Your children's future. I won't make this decision without you. Ella was quiet for a long moment. Thinking. Processing. Weighing impossible options. Finally, she spoke. We request the audience. We make our case. And if the High Council rules against us, her eyes hardened. Then we fight. Not just for us. For every moon-marked wolf who's been destroyed by fear. For every pack member who believed Reformation was possible. For our children's right to exist without apologizing for what they are. It could get brutal, Liam cautioned. The High Council has resources we can't match. Enforcers. Allied pacts. Legal authority across the region. I know. Ella stood, silver eyes blazing. But I'm done being afraid. Done letting others dictate my life through fear. Done teaching my children that hiding is safer than standing. So we stand. Together. And we dare the world to tell us we're wrong. The audience was scheduled for the following day. Ella spent the night preparing, not with legal arguments or political strategy, but with her children. She held Luna, now almost 2 months old and already showing signs of alpha dominance. The girl didn't cry often, but when she did, it was imperious, demanding, a future leader in every gesture. Your father thinks you'll be a warrior queen, Ella told her daughter softly. Strong and fierce and balanced between alpha authority and moo-marked compassion. I hope he's right. I hope you grow up in a world that values both those parts of you. Luna gripped her mother's finger with surprising strength, golden silver eyes serious. Then Ella moved to Ash's crib. The boy was sleeping, his breathing still labored but improving daily. So small, so fragile, yet carrying more power than his sister, according to the moon's spirits. You're going to struggle, she whispered to him. Your body and your power don't match. The world is going to challenge you in ways that will seem impossible. But if you survive, if you learn to harness what you carry, you'll be stronger than any of us. She touched his tiny chest, felt the power pulsing beneath his skin. Felt the moon-marked gift trying to stabilize his fragile body. Fighting to keep him alive despite the odds. I won't let them take you, she promised both children. Won't let them teach you to fear what you are. Won't let them turn your gifts into weapons or chains. Whatever it costs me, whatever I have to fight or sacrifice or burn down, I will keep you safe. I will keep you free. A sound from the doorway made her turn. Aiden stood there, watching her with an expression that was part awe, part heartbreak. I've never seen you like this, he said quietly. Like what? Fierce. Protective. Ready to burn the world down for them. He stepped into the room. He stopped. It's how I should have been for you. 3 years ago. When the conspiracy first struck. I should have been willing to burn it all down rather than let them destroy you. You couldn't have known. Stop protecting me from my failures. His voice was harsh. I should have known. Should have questioned deeper. Should have chosen you over the system. And I didn't. So now he looked at their children. Now I watch you be the parent I should have been. The leader I should have been. The wolf who understands that some things matter more than order or authority or any traditional value. Ella was quiet for a moment. Then, you're being that wolf now. Risking everything to stand with me against the High Council. Willing to secede, to fight, to lose everything you've built rather than let them take our children. That matters. Does it? Does it make up for no, her honesty was brutal but necessary. It doesn't make up for what happened. Doesn't erase the betrayal or the pain or the 3 years I spent believing I deserved torture. But she struggled for words. It's building something new. Not fixing what was broken. But creating something different alongside it. Is that enough? For you? For us? She met his eyes. I don't know yet. Ask me when this is over. When our children are safe. When the High Council has ruled. When I know whether fighting was worth the cost. And if it's not? If we lose? If they take the children and dissolve the Reformation and destroy everything, then we'll still have tried. Still have stood. Still have proven that some wolves won't bow to fear. She turned back to the sleeping twins. And maybe that's enough. Maybe just refusing to surrender, regardless of the outcome, is the victory. Aiden moved to stand beside her. They looked down at their children together, The first time they'd shared this simple parental moment since the revelation. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know you can't forgive me. Can't forget what was done. Can't go back to what we were. But I need you to know I love you. Completely. Despite everything. Because of everything. And whatever happens tomorrow, that won't change. I know." Ella's voice was soft. "I've never doubted that you love me. That was never the question." Then what is the question? Whether love is enough when everything else is broken. Whether two people can build a life together when the foundation is cracked all the way through. Whether, she took a breath. Whether I can look at you without seeing the man who held the whip. And I don't know the answer to that yet. But you're willing to try? I'm willing to stand beside you tomorrow. To fight with you. To co-parent these beautiful, impossible children. Beyond that, she shrugged. Beyond that, I'm taking it one day at a time. That's all I can manage right now. It wasn't the declaration of love and reconciliation Aiden desperately wanted. But it was more than he dared hope for weeks ago. So he took it. Held it. Let it be enough for tonight. Because tomorrow, everything would be tested again. And they had no guarantee they'd survive it. The High Council arrived at dawn. Not the 3 elders who'd come with Margaret. All 9 members. The full governing body that oversaw every wolf pack in the region. Their presence alone was a statement. This was serious. Official. Potentially final. They convened in the Great Hall, the same space where Ella had been sentenced, where the truth had been revealed, where she'd declared her moon-marked nature. Now it would host judgment on whether she and Aiden were fit to lead. The 9 elders sat in a semicircle at the head of the room. Margaret stood to the side, her expression triumphant. The Southern Camp's traditionalists filled half the gallery. The Reformation supporters filled the other half. And in the center, standing before the council like defendants, were Aiden and Ella. The eldest council member, a wolf named Alaric who'd overseen pack governance for 50 years, spoke first. "Alpha King Aiden. Queen Ella. You stand before the High Council to answer charges that your leadership poses a threat to regional stability. That the revelation of moon-marked bloodline in pack leadership creates dangerous precedent. That your pack is fractured beyond repair. How do you answer?" Aiden spoke first. "With respect, Elder Alaric, the charges are built on fear, not fact. Yes, our pack is divided. But that division existed before Ella's revelation. It's the divide between wolves who believe in reformation, in transparency, accountability, compassion, and wolves who cling to traditional hierarchies that enabled corruption. You claim corruption. Yet you yourself upheld those traditional systems for years before your conversion." Alaric's tone was skeptical. "What changed?" "I learned the cost of blindly trusting systems. I learned that authority without accountability enables abuse. I learned," Aiden's voice roughened. "I learned that I personally destroyed an innocent woman because I valued order over truth. And I vowed never to let that happen again." A noble sentiment. But personal guilt is not grounds for restructuring an entire pack. Another elder, a woman named Talia, leaned forward. "The High Council validated your reformation 6 months ago because you demonstrated stability. Order within change. But this," she gestured at the divided gallery. "This is chaos. And chaos in one pack threatens all packs. With respect, Elder, reformation was always going to be chaotic." Ella spoke for the first time. "Change is uncomfortable. It threatens people who benefit from the status quo. But discomfort isn't the same as danger. The traditionalists fear me not because I'm actually threatening them, but because I represent a world where their prejudices no longer dictate policy." "You represent a moon-marked wolf in leadership," Talia countered. "Something forbidden for generations because history has proven moon-marked wolves are unstable. Dangerous. prone to losing control of their power and destroying everything around them. History written by wolves who feared what they didn't understand, Ella shot back. Moon-marked wolves weren't unstable, they were murdered before they could prove otherwise. Killed by packs who valued fear over truth. And you want to perpetuate that cycle? Want to teach another generation that difference equals danger. We want to protect pack stability by destroying anyone who threatens comfortable prejudice. Ella's eyes blazed silver. You claim I'm dangerous. But I've used my power exactly once since discovering it to defend myself in the temple. I haven't hurt anyone. Haven't lost control. Haven't done anything except exist while moon-marked. And you want to remove me for that. We want to ensure regional safety. Then start by examining your own assumptions. Because the real danger isn't my power, it's your fear of it. The gallery erupted. Shouts of agreement from Reformation supporters. Protests from traditionalists. The High Council called for order, but the chaos took several minutes to quell. When silence finally returned, Alaric spoke again. We've heard testimony from Elder Margaret, from wolves in the southern camp, from neighboring pack leaders, all expressing concern that moon-marked leadership sets dangerous precedent, that it encourages other packs to accept what should be forbidden, that it threatens the foundations of wolf pack culture itself. What testimony have you heard from wolves who support the Reformation? Aiden demanded. From the 2/3 of our pack who chose to stay? From the 17 packs who've implemented similar changes? From anyone who's actually benefited from our model instead of just fearing it? We've heard concerns from all sides, but you're weighing traditionalist fear more heavily than progressive success. You're letting prejudice dictate policy instead of evidence. Aiden's voice rang across the hall. The Reformation works. Our pack is stronger, not in spite of change, but because of it. Yes, we're divided right now. But that division is between wolves willing to grow and wolves determined to stagnate. And you're about to rule that stagnation should win. We're about to rule that stability matters more than ideology, Alaric corrected. That regional peace matters more than one pack's experiment. That fear still dictates governance. Ella interrupted. You're about to validate every prejudice. Confirm every assumption that moon-marked wolves are too dangerous to exist. Send a message that no matter what we accomplish, no matter how carefully we use our power, we'll always be judged by what we might do instead of what we've actually done. She took a step forward, silver light flickering around her hands, not threatening, just present. I am moon-marked. My children are moon-marked. And we are not going anywhere. You can rule against us. You can try to remove us. You can attempt to take my children into custody to be raised by wolves who fear them. Her voice dropped to something deadly. But I promise you, that ends badly for everyone involved. Is that a threat? Talia demanded. It's a statement of fact. I will not surrender my children to be taught that they're dangerous. Will not allow them to be raised by wolves who value fear over truth. Will not cooperate with any ruling that treats moon-marked existence as inherently problematic. Then you leave us no choice. Alaric's expression was grave. The High Council cannot allow defiance of our authority. Cannot permit threats against our judgment. Cannot admit you're wrong. Aiden interjected. Cannot acknowledge that your fear is the real threat? Cannot face that you're about to validate the same prejudice that's destroyed moon-marked wolves for generations. We're about to prevent a war. You're about to start one, Aiden corrected. Because we won't comply. Won't surrender. Won't bow to judgment built on fear instead of justice. You want stability? Then rule with courage. Support Reformation. Validate that difference can be strength. Show wolf packs everywhere that fear doesn't have to win. Or what? Talia's question was cold. You'll secede? Become an outlaw pack? Force us to send enforcers to remove you? If necessary. Aiden's certainty was absolute. I would rather fight for what's right than surrender to what's safe. Would rather be removed defending my mate and children than keep my authority by abandoning them. Would rather be remembered as the king who stood against fear than the one who bowed to it. The declaration hung in the air, defiant, dangerous, irrevocable. The High Council conferred quietly among themselves. Minutes stretched into eternity. The gallery held its breath. And Ella and Aiden stood together, hands clasped, waiting for judgment that could destroy everything. Finally, Alaric spoke. The High Council has reached a decision. Alaric's voice carried across the silent hall. Every wolf, Reformation supporter and traditionalist alike, leaned forward, waiting, barely breathing. After careful consideration of testimony from all parties, examination of evidence, and consultation regarding regional stability, he paused, his ancient eyes sweeping across the assembled wolves. We find that the Northern Pack under Alpha King Aiden's leadership has indeed created unprecedented division. That the revelation of moon-marked bloodline in leadership has generated legitimate concerns about safety and precedent. And that immediate action is required to prevent escalation into violence. Ella's hand tightened in Aiden's. This was it. The ruling that would tear their family apart. However, Alaric continued, and that single word made everyone freeze. We also find that the division predates the moon-marked revelation. That the true source of instability is not Queen Ella's power, but the conflict between progressive reformation and traditional resistance. That fear, not fact, drives the opposition. Margaret's triumphant expression began to falter. Furthermore, Alaric's voice strengthened. We find that the conspiracy which destroyed Queen Ella 3 years ago, the fabricated evidence, the systematic torture, the abuse of pack law, represents a failure of traditional systems so profound that reformation became necessary. That the old ways enabled corruption precisely because they lacked transparency and accountability. He looked directly at Ella. Queen Ella, you are moon-marked. This council acknowledges that reality. And we acknowledge that throughout wolf history, moon-marked wolves have been feared, persecuted, and destroyed, not because they were actually dangerous, but because they represented power that traditional hierarchies couldn't control. Silver light flickered around Ella's hands, surprise, hope, disbelief all warring inside her. This council has examined the evidence of your actions since discovering your power, Alaric continued. We find no instances of aggression, no loss of control, no threat to pack members. We find only a mother protecting her children, a queen defending her right to exist, a wolf who has survived horrors that would have broken anyone else and emerged stronger, not bitter. He stood, and the other 8 council members rose with him. Therefore, the High Council rules as follows. Queen Ella's moon-marked nature does not disqualify her from leadership. Her children's moon-marked bloodline does not warrant removal from pack custody. And the Northern Pack's reformation model, including acceptance of moon-marked wolves, is hereby validated as legitimate pack governance. The Reformation supporters erupted in cheers. The traditionalists sat in stunned silence. But Alaric wasn't finished. However, his voice cut through the celebration. This validation comes with conditions. The Northern Pack must demonstrate that moon-marked leadership can coexist with stability. That power can be wielded responsibly. That reformation doesn't devolve into chaos. He turned to address the traditionalists in the southern camp. And to those who cannot accept this ruling, you have 2 choices. Remain in the Northern Pack and commit fully to reformation, accepting that moon-marked wolves will be protected and valued. Or leave peacefully to join traditional packs that share your values. But you do not get to stay and undermine. You do not get to remain and sabotage. Choose integration or departure. Those are your only options. Margaret stepped forward, her face twisted with rage. This is an outrage. The High Council is supposed to protect traditional values. You're validating the very thing we've feared for generations. We're validating evidence over fear, Talia corrected sharply. We're choosing growth over stagnation. And we're admitting that perhaps, just perhaps, our ancestors were wrong to destroy moon-marked wolves instead of learning from them. You'll regret this, Margaret hissed. When she loses control. When those children become threats. When Reformation collapses under the weight of its own idealism. You'll regret choosing her over tradition. Perhaps, Alaric acknowledged. But we'd rather risk being wrong while choosing courage than guarantee being wrong by choosing fear. The ruling stands. He looked at Aiden and Ella. You have 6 months to prove this works. To demonstrate that moon-marked leadership strengthens rather than threatens. To show that your children can be raised safely within the pack. If you succeed, the validation becomes permanent. If you fail, he paused. If you fail, we revisit this ruling. But for now, you have your chance. It wasn't unconditional support. It wasn't a complete victory. But it was a chance. And chances were all they'd ever asked for. The aftermath was immediate and chaotic. Half the traditionalists in the southern camp chose departure. They packed their belongings, gathered their families, and left the northern pack within hours, heading to neighboring territories where traditional hierarchies still reigned, where moon-marked wolves would never be tolerated, where fear dictated policy without question. Good riddance, Ella thought, watching them go. But the other half, roughly 60 wolves, chose to stay. Not because they'd suddenly accepted moon-marked leadership, but because leaving meant abandoning their homes, their connections, everything they'd built. So they stayed, resentful, wary, but bound by the High Council's ruling to at least attempt integration. This is going to be difficult, Liam warned. Those 60 wolves didn't choose reformation. They chose the lesser of two evils. They'll comply with the ruling, but they won't embrace it. I don't need them to embrace it, Ella said. I just need them to not actively sabotage. To give reformation a chance to prove itself. And if they can't do even that, then they leave. Voluntarily or otherwise. Because I'm not spending 6 months walking on eggshells to appease wolves who fundamentally reject what my children are. It was a hard line, but necessary. The High Council had given them a chance, but that chance came with the burden of proof. They had to demonstrate that moon-marked leadership worked, that it strengthened the pack, that it didn't devolve into the chaos traditionalists predicted. No pressure. Margaret didn't leave with the departing traditionalists. Instead, she vanished, disappeared from the southern camp without a trace, leaving behind a note that simply read, "This isn't over." She's planning something, Aiden said grimly. She didn't accept the ruling. She's just regrouping. Let her plan, Ella responded. We have 6 months to build something so strong, so stable, so undeniably successful that whatever she does can't tear it down. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. But it's necessary. She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in weeks, without the weight of betrayal clouding her vision. We've survived conspiracies and exile and lies. We've survived torture and early labor and a ruling that could have destroyed us. We can survive 6 months of proving ourselves. Together. The question was tentative. Hopeful. Ella considered. They'd been co-parents, co-leaders, partners in survival. But not truly together. Not in the way they'd been before the truth shattered everything. Yes, she said finally. Together. Not the same as before. Maybe never the same as before. But together in building something new. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it was forward motion. And sometimes, forward motion was enough. The first week after the ruling was devoted to restructuring. The 60 traditionalists who'd stayed were integrated into work assignments designed to show them Reformation in action. They were paired with Reformation supporters, required to participate in open forums, encouraged strongly to witness the benefits of transparency and accountability firsthand. Some adapted, slowly, reluctantly, but they adapted. Others remained hostile. They complied with the letter of the ruling, but radiated resentment from every pore. They didn't sabotage. The High Council's warning had been clear enough, but they didn't help either. Just existed in a state of bitter compliance. Give them time, Haley suggested when Ella expressed frustration. Fear doesn't disappear overnight. Some of them have been taught for decades that moon-marked wolves are dangerous. 6 months isn't enough to undo that conditioning. We don't have more than 6 months, Ella pointed out. The High Council will evaluate us then. And if the pack is still divided, if traditionalists are still resistant, if we can't demonstrate stability, then we make sure we demonstrate it. Haley's young face was determined. We show them what Reformation really means. We prove that moon-marked leadership makes us stronger. We build something so good that even the most fearful wolf can't deny it works. Idealistic. Probably impossible. But what choice did they have? Luna and Ash grew despite the chaos around them. Luna thrived. At 2 months old, she was already showing signs of extraordinary strength. She could grip with a force that surprised even Aiden. Her gold and silver eyes tracked movement with predatory focus. And when she cried, which was rare, it carried alpha command that made nearby wolves instinctively respond. She's going to be formidable, Kian observed during a routine health check. The hybrid of alpha and moon-marked powers is stabilizing beautifully in her. She'll likely be stronger than either of you by the time she's grown. Ash, conversely, struggled. His body remained small, fragile. His breathing improved, but never quite normalized. He needed constant care, constant monitoring. Multiple times, he'd stopped breathing in the night, requiring emergency intervention. But his power, the moon-marked power that pulsed beneath his weak frame, it kept him alive. Kept fighting when his body wanted to give up. Kept him breathing when his lungs protested. He's a fighter, Ella said, holding her son during one of his better moments. Small. Weak. But he refuses to surrender. Like his mother, Aiden observed. Ella smiled, small but genuine. Like both his parents. You refuse to surrender too. When it would have been easier to let the conspiracy win. To accept traditional values. To let Margaret and the High Council dictate our lives. You stood. That mattered. Not enough to fix what was broken. No, but enough to build something new alongside it. She looked at him over their son's head. I've been thinking about that. About what you said weeks ago. That we can't fix what happened. Can't undo the betrayal. But maybe we can build something different. Not a repaired version of what we were, but something entirely new. What does that look like? I don't know yet. But I think she paused, choosing words carefully. I think it starts with honesty. Complete honesty. No more protecting each other from difficult truths. No more hidden investigations or secret plans. Just transparency. Even when it's uncomfortable. I can do that. Can you? Because it means admitting when you're scared. When you're uncertain. When you don't have answers. It means being vulnerable in ways that alpha conditioning teaches you to avoid. Aiden looked at his son, tiny, struggling, beautiful. I'm terrified, he admitted. Every day. That Ash won't survive. That Luna will face the same persecution you faced. That the High Council will rule against us in 6 months. That Margaret will succeed in whatever she's planning. That you'll wake up one day and realize you can't forgive me. That I'll lose everything that matters. His voice roughened. I'm terrified constantly. And I don't have answers for any of it. The vulnerability of it, The raw, unfiltered fear from a wolf who'd been trained his entire life to project strength. It cracked something in Ella's chest. "Thank you," she said softly, "for trusting me with that. For being honest even when it makes you vulnerable. Does it help? Does it make this less easier? No, but it makes it real. And real is what we need if we're going to build something that lasts." For months into the 6-month evaluation period, something shifted. One of the traditionalists, a wolf named Zane who'd been vocally opposed to Moo-marked leadership, requested a private meeting with Ella. She agreed, curious despite her wariness. They met in the garden's neutral ground, public enough to be safe, private enough to speak freely. "I owe you an apology," Zane said without preamble. "I've spent 4 months watching, waiting for you to lose control, to prove that Moo-marked wolves are as dangerous as I was taught." And he stopped. "And you haven't. You've been patient with wolves who resent you. You've been fair in leadership. You've protected everyone, even those of us who don't want your protection. And your power," he gestured helplessly, "you've used it exactly once, and that was in self-defense. Everything else has been restraint." "What changed your mind?" Ella asked. "My daughter. She's 8. And last week, she got sick. Really sick. The healers couldn't figure out what was wrong. But you," his voice caught. "You came. Without being asked. And you used your moon-marked power to sense what was wrong. Found a poison in her system the healers had missed. Removed it. Saved her life." Ella remembered. A routine healing house visit where she'd sensed something off about a young patient. She'd acted on instinct, using her power to detect and neutralize the toxin. She hadn't thought much of it, just helping where she could. But to Zane, it had been everything. "You saved my child," he said. "The thing I feared most, your power, that's what kept her alive." And I realized, he took a breath. "I realized I was wrong. About you. About moon-marked wolves. About everything. Does that mean you support Reformation now?" "It means I'm willing to try. To give it a real chance instead of just complying out of obligation. To see if maybe, just maybe, the old ways were wrong and this new way is better." He met her eyes. "And I'm not the only one. There are others. Wolves who've been watching you these 4 months and starting to question their own assumptions. It's not everyone. But it's more than you think." The revelation was unexpected. Hopeful. "Thank you for telling me," Ella said. "And Zane? Your daughter, how is she?" "Fully recovered. Thanks to you." He smiled, genuine, grateful. "She asks about the silver-eyed queen constantly. Wants to know if she'll grow up to have powers like yours." "I told her," he paused. "I told her that what matters isn't the power. It's how you use it. And that you use yours to help people. To heal instead of hurt. That's what she should aspire to." After he left, Ella sat in the gardens and let herself feel something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not naive hope. Not the belief that everything would be perfect. But realistic hope that maybe, just maybe, they were building something that could last. That change was possible. Even when it was hard. Even when it required patience and time and wolves willing to question their own prejudices. That reformation might actually work. 5.5 months into the evaluation period, Margaret made her move. She returned to pack territory in the dead of night, accompanied by 12 wolves, all former pack members who'd left rather than accept moon-marked leadership. All armed. All determined. They didn't announce themselves. Didn't request audience. Just infiltrated the capital under cover of darkness and headed straight for the nursery where Luna and Ash slept. The goal was obvious: eliminate the moon-marked heirs. Remove the future of Reformation. Force the High Council to rule that moon-marked leadership was too dangerous after all. But they didn't account for one thing. Ella's power had grown exponentially in 5 months of practice and acceptance. She could sense life forces across the entire capital now. could detect threats before they materialized into action. She felt Margaret's group the moment they crossed into pack territory, and she was waiting when they reached the nursery. "Far enough," Ella said, stepping out of the shadows. Silver light blazed around her, not just flickering now, but radiant. Powerful. Controlled. Margaret and her wolves stopped, weapons raised. "You can't stop all of us," Margaret said. "We're here to end this. To prevent the disaster your children will become. To save the packs from moon-marked corruption." "You're here to murder children in their sleep," Ella corrected. "To destroy innocence because you're afraid of what they might become. To prove that fear still dictates your every choice. They're moon-marked. They're dangerous. They're 2 months old. They haven't hurt anyone. Haven't done anything except exist. And you want to kill them for that." Ella's power surged, filling the corridor with silver light. "You want to see dangerous? Let me show you what moon-marked really means when we're actually threatened." The confrontation drew attention. Guards arrived. Aiden burst from the Alpha's quarters. Reformation supporters and the remaining traditionalists both converged on the nursery. And everyone, friend and enemy alike, watched as Ella demonstrated exactly what moon-marked power looked like when protecting her young. She didn't attack, didn't hurt anyone. Instead, she created a barrier of silver light around the nursery that nothing could penetrate. Absolute protection. Immovable defense. A shield that would hold as long as her children needed protecting. "You can't maintain that forever," Margaret spat. "Watch me." Ella's voice was granite. "I will hold this shield for days if necessary. Weeks. Months. My children will be safe. And you," she looked at Margaret and the 12 wolves who'd come to murder babies in their sleep. "You will face justice for attempted infanticide." The High Council was summoned immediately. They arrived within hours, called by emergency protocol that allowed for swift intervention in cases of imminent danger. And they witnessed Margaret's crime, heard testimony from multiple witnesses, saw the evidence of premeditated child murder. The ruling was swift, final, absolute. Margaret and her accomplices were stripped of all pack affiliations, declared rogue, marked for death if they ever threatened any pack again, and exiled permanently from all territories under High Council jurisdiction. "Let this be clear," Alaric announced to the assembled pack. "The High Council will not tolerate violence against moon-marked wolves, will not permit murder disguised as prevention. Anyone who attempts harm based solely on moon-marked status will face the harshest penalties we can impose." It was the validation they'd been fighting for, the protection they desperately needed, the statement that moon-marked lives mattered as much as any others. And as Margaret was escorted away in silver chains, screaming threats and prophecies of doom, Ella lowered her shield and collapsed into Aiden's arms. "It's over," he murmured into her hair. "You did it. You protected them. You proved I can build walls," Ella interrupted. "But I want to build more than that. I want to build a world where my children don't need walls, where they can exist without constant threat, where being moon-marked is valued instead of feared. We'll build it," Aiden promised. "Together. For them. For us. For every moon-marked wolf who comes after." And for the first time since the truth came out, since everything shattered, Ella believed him. Not because the past was fixed, but because the future felt possible. And possibility was enough to build on. The High Council's final evaluation came exactly 6 months after their initial ruling. The pack gathered in the Great Hall once more, but this time, the atmosphere was different. Not divided and hostile. Not fearful and uncertain. Just attentive. Wolves who'd spent 6 months learning whether reformation actually worked. Whether moon-marked leadership strengthened or threatened. Whether the ideals they'd fought for could survive contact with reality. Alaric and the 8 other council members sat in their semicircle. But this time, they didn't look like judges preparing to deliver verdict. They looked like observers who'd already made up their minds. 6 months ago, Alaric began. We ruled that the Northern Pack's reformation model, including acceptance of moon-marked leadership, would be validated on a probationary basis. We gave you 6 months to prove this worked. To demonstrate stability, strength, and responsible use of power. He paused, looking across the assembled wolves. In that time, we have observed significant changes. The pack that was fractured has found cohesion. Traditionalists who resisted have, many of them, come to accept or even embrace new values. And Queen Ella has demonstrated extraordinary restraint and wisdom in wielding power that could easily have been abused. Ella stood beside Aiden, holding Luna while he held Ash. Their children, now 6 months old, were alert and healthy. Luna already trying to squirm free to explore. Ash still smaller than he should be but breathing easier, growing stronger despite the odds. We've also witnessed an attempted massacre, Alaric continued, his voice hardening. Former council member Margaret and 12 accomplices attempted to murder the royal children based solely on their moon-marked bloodline. And we watched Queen Ella respond not with vengeance, not with violence, but with pure defense. She protected her young without harming anyone. Proved that even when directly threatened, moon-marked power can be controlled. He stood, and the other council members rose with him. Therefore, after careful evaluation and extensive deliberation, the High Council issues its final ruling. The Northern Pack's reformation model is validated permanently. Queen Ella's moon-marked nature is acknowledged as strength, not threat. And her children, Luna and Ash, are recognized as legitimate heirs with full rights and protections under Pack law and High Council authority. The Reformation supporters erupted in celebration. Even some of the former traditionalists clapped, not enthusiastically, but with genuine respect. Furthermore, Alaric raised his voice over the noise. The High Council is issuing new regional guidelines. Effective immediately, moon-marked wolves are protected across all territories under our jurisdiction. Any pack that persecutes, harms, or discriminates against moon-marked individuals will face High Council intervention. Any violence against moon-marked wolves will be treated as the most serious crime we can prosecute. The announcement sent shockwaves through the hall. This wasn't just validation of the Northern Pack. This was reformation spreading across the entire region. Protection for every moon-marked wolf who'd been hiding, who'd been suppressing their power, who'd been living in fear of discovery. The Northern Pack has proven that change is possible, Alaric said. That fear can be overcome. That power can be wielded with wisdom and restraint. And we challenge every pack in this region to learn from their example, to question assumptions, to choose courage over comfort. He looked directly at Ella and Aiden. Alpha King Aiden. Queen Ella. You have exceeded every expectation. Built something remarkable from the ashes of profound injustice. And you have our deepest respect. It was everything. Validation. Protection. Proof that 6 months of struggle had been worth it. And as Alaric and the High Council departed, their work done, their ruling final, Ella allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Not completely. Not naively. But genuinely safe in a way that made her want to cry. We did it, Aiden whispered beside her, his voice thick with emotion. We actually did it. We did, Ella agreed. Then she corrected herself. They did. The pack did. Every wolf who chose reformation over fear. Every traditionalist who questioned their assumptions. Every person who gave us a chance instead of condemning us outright. They made this possible. You made this possible. Your strength. Your refusal to hide. Your willingness to stand even when standing meant risking everything. Ella looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who'd destroyed her and then spent years trying to build something better from the wreckage. Who'd stood beside her through conspiracies and exile and revelations that would have broken lesser wolves. Who'd loved her even when she couldn't love him back. We made it possible, she said finally. Together. Imperfectly. Messily. But together. It wasn't a declaration of love. Wasn't forgiveness for what had been done. But it was acknowledgement that they'd built something real from impossible circumstances. And sometimes, acknowledgement was the first step toward healing. The celebration that followed lasted 3 days. Not enforced celebration. Not political performance. Just genuine joy from a pack that had survived impossible odds and come out stronger. Music filled the capital. Food was shared freely. Stories were told of the journey from that first hearing, where truth had finally emerged, to this moment of validation. And throughout it all, Ella watched wolves who'd once hated her approach with gratitude, with respect, with stories of how reformation had changed their lives. Zane's daughter, the 8-year-old Ella, had healed, presented her with a drawing. Crude but heartfelt. It showed a woman with silver eyes standing in front of 2 small children, light radiating from her hands. "That's you protecting us," the girl explained. "Protecting everyone. You're like a guardian. That's what I want to be when I grow up. A guardian like you." The gift made Ella's throat tight. You can be anything you want. Guardian. Warrior. Healer. Leader. The world is open to you now in ways it wasn't before. Because of you. Because of everyone who chose courage over fear. Including your father. He was brave enough to question what he'd been taught. That matters more than you know. Other wolves came. Shared how transparency had made them feel safer. How accountability had prevented abuses they'd endured under the old system. How the Reformation had given them voices they'd never had before. And slowly, so slowly Ella barely noticed it happening, the weight she'd been carrying for years began to lift. Not completely. The scars remained. The memories of torture and exile and betrayal didn't vanish just because the future looked bright. But they became bearable. Became part of her story instead of the entirety of it. She was no longer just the wolf who'd been destroyed. She was also the wolf who'd survived. Who'd stood. Who'd built something beautiful from terrible materials. And that felt like victory. On the 3rd night of celebration, Ella found herself back in the gardens. Her gardens. The ones she'd designed. The ones that had been her refuge through every crisis. Aiden found her there as she'd known he would. Some things were predictable. Comforting in their reliability. "The twins are asleep," he reported, settling onto the bench beside her. Not too close. Respecting the boundaries she'd maintained even as they'd worked together. Luna fought it as usual. Ash went down easily. Kian says his breathing is the best it's been since birth. He's getting stronger. Ella smiled. Slowly. But stronger. Like his mother. Like both his parents. She turned to look at Aiden. Really look at him for the first time without the filter of pain and betrayal clouding everything. "You've been patient. These 6 months. You've respected every boundary. Haven't pushed for more than I could give. Haven't made me feel guilty for needing distance. Because you deserved that distance. Deserved space to heal without pressure. And now? What do you want now?" The question hung between them, loaded with 6 months of careful partnership, 6 months of co-parenting, 6 months of learning to exist in the same space without the foundation of easy love they'd once had. Aiden stopped. Started again. "I want to ask if there's any possibility of us. Not what we were. I know we can't go back to that. But something new. Something built on honesty instead of assumptions. On choices instead of circumstances. On his voice roughened. On you choosing me because you want to, not because you have to for the children or the pack or any other reason. Ella was quiet for a long moment, processing, examining her own feelings with the honesty she demanded from him. I don't know if I can forgive you completely, she said finally. The whip. The exile. The 3 years of believing I deserved punishment. Those wounds, they're too deep to just disappear. They've shaped who I am now. And I can't pretend they didn't happen. I know. I'm not asking you to. But she took his hand, the gesture deliberate and significant. I think I can build something new alongside those wounds. Not fixing them. Not pretending they don't exist. But acknowledging them as part of our story and choosing to move forward anyway. What does that look like? I don't know yet. But I think she paused, choosing words carefully. I think it looks like trying. Like dating, maybe. Getting to know each other again as the people we are now instead of who we were before everything fell apart. Like rebuilding trust one small moment at a time instead of expecting it to magically reappear. I can do that. Aiden's voice was thick with emotion. However long it takes. However many small moments we need. I'll take it. All of it. Gratefully. Even if it never becomes what we had before. Even if we stay partners and co-parents, but never fully reconcile romantically. Even then. Because having you in my life, in any capacity, is better than the alternative. And if friendship and partnership is all you can offer, then that's enough. It has to be enough. Because you're enough. The words settled into Ella's chest, warm and genuine. Then we try, she said. We take it slow. We're honest about everything, fears, hopes, frustrations. And we see if maybe, somewhere down the line, we can build something that feels whole even if it's different from what we lost. When do we start? Ella smiled, small but genuine. How about now? Tell me something true. Something you've been afraid to say. Aiden thought for a moment. Then, I'm terrified that I'll mess this up again. That I'll make some decision or say something or fail in some way that proves you were right to keep distance. That I'll confirm that I don't deserve a second chance. That's valid fear. Ella squeezed his hand. My turn. I'm terrified that I'll never be able to look at you without seeing the man who held the whip. That the wound is too fundamental. That I'm giving us both false hope by trying when maybe we should just accept that some breaks can't be mended. Also valid. So we're both terrified and trying anyway. Sounds about right. Aiden's smile matched hers. What now? Now we sit here. In this garden. And we just exist together. Without pressure. Without expectations. Just two wolves who've survived hell and are trying to figure out what comes after. So they sat, hand in hand, in comfortable silence that didn't need filling. And for the first time in longer than either could remember, the silence felt like peace instead of distance. 8 months after the High Council's final ruling, the Northern Pack held another ceremony. Not a naming ceremony this time. A coronation. Luna and Ash, now 14 months old, were formally recognized as heirs to Pack leadership. Not just acknowledged, but celebrated. Their moon-marked bloodline presented not as liability, but as strength. As proof that the Pack valued all its members, regardless of how their power manifested. Luna toddled across the platform with the confident determination of a future alpha. Already strong, already commanding, already showing signs of the warrior queen she'd become. She had Aiden's golden eyes shot through with Ella's silver, a perfect hybrid that marked her as something new. Something unprecedented. Ash was carried by Ella. Still small for his age. Still struggling with health issues that would likely follow him his entire life. But alive. Thriving in his own way. His silver eyes, pure moon-marked, more intense than even his mother's, tracked everything with uncanny awareness. "The pack accepts Luna and Ash as heirs," Liam declared, performing the ceremony with pride. "Not despite their moo-marked nature, but because of it. Because they represent the future we're building, where power is diverse, where strength comes in many forms, where being different is valued instead of feared." The pack, Reformation supporters, former traditionalists, everyone responded with genuine cheers. And Ella, standing beside Aiden with their children, felt the last piece of her carefully constructed armor crack and fall away. She was safe. Her children were safe. The pack accepted them. The High Council protected them. And the man beside her, flawed, imperfect, still carrying guilt for wounds he'd inflicted, he was trying, every day, to be better, to build something worthy of a second chance. After the ceremony, after the celebration wound down, after the twins were finally asleep, Ella made a decision. She went to Aiden's chambers, knocked, entered when he called out. He looked up from the reports he'd been reviewing, surprise evident. "Ella? Is something wrong?" The twins are fine." She closed the door behind her. "I wanted to talk to you. About us." Wariness crept into his expression. "All right. We've been trying for 8 months. Dating, sort of. Taking it slow. Rebuilding trust through small moments." She crossed the room to stand in front of him. "And I think it's working. I look at you now and I don't just see the man who held the whip. I see the man who stood with me against the High Council, who protected our children, who respected my boundaries even when it hurt, who's been patient and honest and willing to build something new instead of demanding we resurrect what died. Ella, I'm not saying I've forgiven everything. I don't know if I ever will completely. The wound is too deep, too fundamental. But I'm saying she took his hands in hers. I'm saying maybe forgiveness isn't the point. Maybe the point is choosing to move forward despite the wound. To build something strong enough to hold both the love and the hurt. To acknowledge what happened without letting it define everything that comes after." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to try. Really try. Not just partnership or co-parenting or careful distance. But actual us. Messy and complicated and built on honesty about all the ways we've both been broken." She met his eyes. "I'm saying I love you. Still. Despite everything. Maybe because of everything. And I want to see if we can make this work." The words hung in the air, tentative, powerful, terrifying. Aiden stood slowly, carefully, like he was afraid sudden movement would shatter the moment. "Are you sure? Because I don't want you to feel pressured. Don't want you to think you have to. I don't have to anything." Her interruption was firm. "I'm choosing this. Choosing you. Choosing us. With full knowledge of what that means. What it's cost. What it might still cost. Then yes." His voice broke completely. "God's yes. I love you. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of this choice. Of you. Of what we're building. You don't have to be worthy. You just have to be honest. Present. Willing to keep trying even when it's hard." She leaned up, kissed him gently. "Can you do that?" "Yes. Every day. For the rest of our lives." It wasn't the fairy tale ending where everything was magically fixed. Where the past disappeared and they lived happily without complication. But it was real. Built on truth instead of illusion. On choices instead of circumstances. On love that had survived being tested in every possible way and emerged battered but unbroken. And sometimes, real was better than perfect. 1 year after the High Council's final ruling, the Northern Pack hosted a regional summit. 17 packs who'd implemented Reformation gathered to share strategies, celebrate successes, and plan for continued growth. But more significantly, 12 other packs sent observers. Traditionalist packs that hadn't yet committed to change, but were curious. Were questioning. Were starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, there was another way. Ella stood before the assembled leaders and observers, her children playing nearby under watchful supervision, and told her story. All of it. The conspiracy that had destroyed her. The torture she'd endured. The exile. The revelation of truth that came too late to prevent suffering. The discovery of her moon-marked nature. The fight to protect her children. The slow, painful work of building something better from the ashes of injustice. She didn't sugarcoat it. Didn't pretend it had been easy or clean or that some wounds had fully healed. She told the truth. Raw and complete and devastating. And when she finished, when silence filled the hall, one of the traditionalist observers stood. "My pack has hunted moo-marked wolves for 3 generations," the alpha said quietly. "Killed them before they could become threats. It's what we were taught. What our parents were taught. What we believed kept us safe." He paused. "But watching you these past days, seeing how you lead, how you use your power to heal instead of harm, how your children are being raised to value their gifts instead of fear them." He swallowed hard. "I think we were wrong. I think we've been destroying something precious out of unfounded fear. And I want," his voice strengthened, "I want to change that. Want to give moon-marked wolves in my pack a chance. Want to learn from your example." It was one alpha. One pack. One small crack in centuries of prejudice. But one crack could spread, could grow, could eventually shatter the entire foundation of fear that had governed wolf packs for generations. And as Ella watched that alpha sit down, watched other traditionalist observers exchange uncertain glances, watched the possibility of real, lasting change take root, she understood that this was the real victory. Not the High Council's ruling. Not the validation or protection or even the personal healing. But this, the slow, difficult work of changing minds. Of proving through actions and time that fear was learned and could be unlearned. That difference could be strength. That power could be wielded with wisdom. That reformation was possible. Not easy. Not quick. But possible. She felt Aiden's hand find hers. Felt their bond scarred but strong, complicated but genuine, pulse with connection. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually changed the world." "We're changing it," Ella corrected. "It's not done. Won't ever be fully done. But we're moving forward. Building something better. One mind, one heart, one pack at a time. Together." Together, she agreed. And she meant it. Completely. Without reservation. Because they'd learned the hardest lesson. That love doesn't erase wounds. That truth doesn't automatically heal. That justice doesn't undo injustice. But choice matters. Effort matters. The daily decision to keep building despite the scars, that matters more than any easy resolution. They were broken wolves building a broken world into something better. And somehow, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. This is how it ends. Not with all wounds healed. Not with perfect reconciliation. But with real, messy, beautiful progress. Ella and Aiden rebuilt their love on honesty instead of illusion. The pack reformed despite resistance. The region started changing one mind at a time. And moo-marked wolves, for the first time in generations, had protection. Had hope. Had proof that they could exist without fear. The lie came out too late to prevent Ella's suffering. But it came in time to prevent her children's. And maybe that's the real victory, not fixing the past, but building a better future. 3 years after the truth came out, Ella stood in the gardens at dawn, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. The same gardens where she'd hidden after her first exile. Where she'd processed revelation after devastating revelation. Where she'd slowly, painfully rebuilt herself from the ashes of who she'd been. But this morning, she wasn't hiding, wasn't processing trauma, wasn't carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. She was just present. In this moment. In this life she'd fought so hard to claim. Small footsteps behind her announced Luna's arrival before her daughter spoke. "Mama, Ash won't share the training stones." Luna's voice carried the imperious tone of a future alpha. At 4 years old, she was already formidable, strong, confident, leading the other pack children with natural authority. "I told him sharing is pack law, but he said he's practicing control and needs them." Ella smiled, turning to face her daughter. Luna stood with hands on hips, golden silver eyes flashing with indignation. She wore simple training clothes, already developing the muscular build of a warrior despite her young age. "And what did you do?" Ella asked. "I was going to take them anyway because I'm bigger and stronger. But then I remembered what you said about power." Luna's expression turned thoughtful. "That being able to do something doesn't mean you should. That real strength is choosing when not to use force." "Exactly. So, what's the solution? Ask Papa to get more training stones so we can both practice?" "Perfect. See? You're already learning to lead." Ella pulled her daughter into a hug. "Now go tell your brother you're sorry for trying to take his stones. Even if you could have." Luna grumbled but obeyed, running back toward the training grounds where Ash spent most of his mornings. Ash, her beautiful, impossible son. Still small for his age. Still struggling with health issues that required daily monitoring. But alive. Thriving in his own way. And powerful, more powerful than anyone had anticipated. At 4, he could sense emotions across the entire pack territory. Could detect lies with uncanny accuracy. Could heal minor injuries with a touch. His Mu-marked gifts had manifested early and strong, compensating for the physical weakness that would likely never fully resolve. He was also gentle, thoughtful. Where Luna led with strength, Ash led with wisdom. They balanced each other perfectly, the warrior and the healer, the force and the compassion. Future leaders who would reshape what pack governance meant. If they survived long enough to claim that future. Because despite 3 years of progress, despite reformation spreading to 43 packs now, despite High Council protection, there were still wolves who feared Mu-marked power. Still traditionalists who whispered that allowing Ella's children to live was a mistake. Still threats that required constant vigilance. But Ella had learned something crucial in these 3 years. You couldn't live your entire life in fear of what might happen. You had to find moments of peace within the chaos. Had to celebrate victories even while preparing for battles. Had to choose joy deliberately, repeatedly, stubbornly. Because joy was resistance. Happiness was defiance. Living fully despite everything that tried to destroy you, that was the ultimate triumph. "You're thinking too loud again." Aiden's voice made her turn. He emerged from the garden path, already dressed for the day's council sessions. 3 years had added silver to his dark hair. Stress, he claimed, though Ella suspected it was just age catching up with them both. They'd been through so much. Survived impossible odds. Built something real from the wreckage of profound betrayal. And somewhere along the way, they'd become whole again. Not the same as before, but whole in a new way. Built on honesty and choice and daily recommitment to each other. "I was thinking about how far we've come," Ella said as he reached her. 3 years ago, I couldn't look at you without seeing the man who held the whip. Now I look at you and see," she paused. "I see my partner, my mate, the father of my children. The king who stood with me when standing meant risking everything. The wound's still there though. Not a question." Aiden knew her too well now to pretend otherwise. "Always. Some scars don't fade." She took his hand. "But I've learned to carry it differently. Not as this consuming thing that defines everything, but as part of my story. Part of what made me who I am. And who I am, she smiled. Who I am is someone who survived. Who stood. Who built something beautiful from terrible circumstances. And I like who I am now. Even with the scars. Maybe because of them. I'm glad. Aiden pulled her close. And I'm sorry. Still. Always. For the part one played in creating those scars. I know. And I've forgiven you as much as I can. The rest, she shrugged. The rest we just live with. Together. As imperfect wolves building an imperfect life. It was their ritual now. This acknowledgement that some wounds remained. This honesty about what could and couldn't be fixed. This choice to move forward anyway. The regional summit starts tomorrow, Aiden said after a moment. 63 packs sending representatives this time, including 12 traditionalist packs that have never attended before. They're curious. Scared. But curious. Ella leaned against him. That's progress. Even if it's slow. Margaret sent another threat letter. Ella sighed. Margaret. Still out there somewhere. Still convinced that moon-marked wolves would destroy pack culture. Still sending periodic threats that never materialized into actual danger, but kept them alert. What did this one say? The usual. That we're corrupting wolf society. That our children are abominations. That someday we'll pay for defying natural order. Aiden's arms tightened around her. I've tripled security for the summit. Just in case. She's not coming. She knows she'd be executed on sight after the assassination attempt. Ella was certain of this. The letters are just her way of staying relevant. Of reminding us she's still out there. Still opposed. Still waiting for us to fail. And if we don't fail? If Reformation succeeds completely, then she dies bitter and alone, having wasted her life on fear and hatred. And we, Ella looked up at him. We live. We lead. We raise our children to be better than the wolves who tried to destroy them. And we prove every single day that love and courage matter more than any tradition. The summit began the next day with an attendance that would have been impossible 3 years ago. 63 packs. Hundreds of wolves. Reformation supporters and curious traditionalists and everything in between. All gathered in the Northern Pack's expanded Great Hall, rebuilt after the original proved too small for regional gatherings. Ella opened the summit with words she'd spent weeks refining. 3 years ago, I stood in a different version of this hall and told you I was moon-marked. That my children carried moon-marked bloodline. That we would not hide or apologize or diminish ourselves to make others comfortable. And I asked you to choose, accept us or leave. She looked across the assembled leaders. 2/3 chose to stay. Chose Reformation. Chose to question assumptions that had governed wolf packs for generations. And in 3 years, you've built something remarkable. Not perfect. Not without struggle. But remarkable. She gestured to the crowd. 43 packs have now implemented full reformation. 20 more have implemented partial reforms. And 12 traditionally hierarchical packs sent observers here today, not to condemn, but to learn. To consider whether maybe there's another way. Some of you are thinking, this is just Northern Pack propaganda. Just Ella trying to justify her own existence. Just Reformation supporters congratulating themselves. She smiled. And maybe there's some truth to that. But there's also this. In 3 years since Reformation began spreading, we've documented a 67% decrease in pack corruption. An 82% increase in member satisfaction. A complete elimination of fabricated charges in packs with the Hartley provision in place. The statistics were undeniable. Collected independently. Verified by the High Council itself. Reformation works, Ella said simply. Not because it's perfect. Not because it eliminates all problems. but because it creates systems where problems can be addressed instead of hidden, where wolves have voices instead of just orders, where power is accountable instead of absolute. She paused. And yes, it works even when leadership includes moo-marked wolves. Even when the queen and her children carry power that traditionalists fear. Because the fear was always unfounded, based on stories instead of evidence, on assumption instead of observation. A hand rose in the traditionalist section. Ella nodded permission to speak. An older alpha stood, one she didn't recognize. My pack has operated on traditional hierarchy for 5 generations. We've maintained order, prevented chaos, kept our members safe. Why should we risk that stability for an experiment that might fail? Because your stability came at a cost, Ella responded. How many wolves in your pack have been silenced for questioning? How many have suffered abuses they couldn't report because authority was absolute? How many moo-marked wolves did you destroy before they could prove they weren't dangerous? The alpha's expression flickered. Uncomfortable. I'm not saying traditional packs are evil, Ella continued. I'm saying they're limited. They prevent certain kinds of chaos while enabling others. And reformation, messy as it is, it prevents the kind of chaos that comes from unchecked power, from fear dictating policy, from destroying difference instead of learning from it. My pack has never destroyed a moon-marked wolf, the alpha protested. Because you've never had one, Ella countered gently. But if you did? If a moo-marked pup was born tomorrow in your territory, what would you do? Honestly, the alpha was quiet for a long moment. Then, I don't know. Before this summit, I would have said we'd contain them, suppress their power, prevent them from becoming dangerous. But watching your children these past 2 days, he gestured to where Luna and Ash sat in a guarded section, playing with other pack children. They're not dangerous. They're just children, with gifts that could be used for healing, for protection, for good. Exactly. And reformation is about making space for those gifts, for wolves who don't fit traditional molds, for ideas that challenge comfortable assumptions. It's uncomfortable. It requires constant work, but it's better than the alternative, which is stagnation, fear, the slow rot that comes from refusing to grow. Ella's voice strengthened. The world is changing. Wolf packs can change with it, adapt, evolve, find new ways to provide safety and community. Or they can cling to old ways and watch as their members leave for packs that value them more fully. The choice is yours. But the change is coming either way. It was bold, provocative, exactly what the moment needed. And as Ella watched that alpha sit down, watched other traditionalist observers exchange uncertain glances, watched the seeds of possibility take root, she knew they'd won. Not completely, not finally, but enough. Enough to keep building, enough to keep spreading. Enough to ensure her children would grow up in a world that valued them instead of feared them. That night, after the summit's first day concluded, after Luna and Ash were finally asleep despite their excitement about meeting so many new wolves, Ella and Aiden found themselves back in their private chambers. It had taken a year after Ella's decision to really try before she'd moved back into the Alpha's quarters. Another year before sleeping in the same bed felt natural instead of forced. But now, 3 years after truth shattered everything, this space felt like home again. Different from before. Built on different foundations. But home. You were magnificent today, Aiden said, pulling her close. The way you handled that Alpha's challenge. The statistics you presented. The vision you cast for what reformation could be. Just magnificent. We were magnificent, Ella corrected. Your policy implementations made those statistics possible. Your willingness to cede some authority created the systems that work. This isn't just me. It's us. Us. Aiden said the word like a prayer. I still can't believe I get to say that. That you chose to give us another chance. That we're here, whole, building this life together. We're not whole, Ella reminded him gently. We're healed. There's a difference. Whole implies nothing broke. Healed acknowledges the break and the repair work. And I think healed is better anyway. More honest. More real. More us. Exactly. More us. She kissed him deep, genuine, full of 3 years of rebuilding and recommitment. I love you. Present tense. Daily choice. Not because the past is fixed, but because the present is worth fighting for. I love you too. Always. Despite everything. Because of everything. His hands found her face, thumbs tracing her cheekbones. Thank you. For giving me this. For letting me be part of your life. For trusting me with your heart even after I broke it. You didn't break it alone. The conspiracy broke it. The system broke it. Fear broke it. You were just the weapon they used. She'd told him this before, would probably tell him again. And you've spent 3 years proving you're not that weapon anymore. That you can be trusted. That you choose me every single day. I do choose you. Every day. For the rest of my life. Good. Because I'm choosing you too. And our impossible children. And this imperfect pack. And the messy, difficult, beautiful work of building something better. They fell into bed together, not just physically, but emotionally. Connected in ways that went beyond mate bonds or alpha authority or any traditional structure. Connected by choice, by honesty, by the deliberate, daily decision to keep building despite the scars. And as Ella drifted towards sleep, wrapped in Aiden's arms, she felt something she'd thought was lost forever, complete peace. Not the naive peace of someone who'd never been broken, but the hard-won peace of someone who'd survived being destroyed and built themselves into something even stronger. She was moon-marked. Mother. Queen. Survivor. Leader. Mate. She was whole and scarred and powerful and gentle all at once. She was exactly who she was supposed to be. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. 5 years after the truth came out, Luna turned 7 with a celebration that drew wolves from every reformed pack. She was already training with the warriors, already showing signs of the formidable leader she'd become. Strong. Brave. Balance between her father's authority and her mother's compassion. Ash turned 7 the same day, twins after all. He celebrated quietly, surrounded by the few close friends who understood that his power manifested differently. Who valued wisdom over strength. Who saw his gentleness as gift instead of weakness. He would never be a warrior. His body would never allow it. But he would be something better. A healer, a counselor, a voice of conscience when the pack needed guidance. Together, Luna and Ash represented the future Ella had fought for, where power came in many forms, where difference was valued, where being moon-marked meant strength instead of danger. Ella watched her children laugh with their friends, some moon-marked, some not, all of them growing up in a world that accepted instead of feared, and felt tears burn her eyes. Happy tears, I hope, Aiden murmured beside her. Very happy. She gestured helplessly. I'm so grateful. For all of it. The struggle. The pain. The impossible journey that led us here. Because without all that, without being destroyed and rebuilt, we wouldn't have this. Wouldn't have them. Wouldn't have proven that reformation works. Was it worth it? The question was quiet. Serious. All the suffering. All the betrayal. All the years of pain. Was it worth it to get here? Ella considered. Honest, as always. I don't know. Some days, yes. Some days I think I would give anything to have avoided that cell, that whip, that exile. To have been believed from the start. To have never endured any of it. And today? She looked at her children, at the pack celebrating around them, at the 43 reformed territories and 20 more considering it, at the world they'd changed through sheer stubborn refusal to surrender. Today, yes. Today it was worth it. Because look what we built from the ashes. Look what we proved was possible. Look at the future we're giving them. They're going to change everything, Aiden predicted. Luna with her strength. Ash with his wisdom. Together, they're going to make even our Reformation look cautious. Good. Every generation should push further than the last. Should question what we accepted. Should build something even better. Ella smiled. That's what progress looks like. Not as having all the answers, but them having the freedom to find new ones. The celebration continued late into the night. Music and laughter and joy that wasn't forced or political or performative. Just genuine happiness from a pack that had learned to value every member. And as Ella watched wolves who'd once feared her dance with wolves who'd always supported her, watched traditionalists who'd questioned everything slowly embrace change, watched her children lead games that mixed ranks and bloodlines without thought, she understood the final truth. The lie had come out too late to prevent her suffering. But it had come in time to prevent everyone else's. To prove that truth mattered. That justice mattered. That fighting for what's right was worth any cost. She'd been destroyed. But she'd survived. And in surviving, she'd changed the world. That was her legacy. Not the pain. Not the betrayal. Not the scars. But the change. The hope. The proof that broken things could be remade into something beautiful. And really, what more could anyone ask for? Listen to me one final time. This story was never about a perfect resolution. Never about the wound healing completely or the past disappearing or love conquering all without complication. It was about surviving. About standing when the world tries to break you. About choosing courage over comfort. About building something real from impossible materials. Ella was tortured for crimes she didn't commit. The truth came too late to prevent her suffering. But it came in time to prevent her children's suffering. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the victory. Not fixing the past, but building a better future. Not erasing the pain, but transforming it into purpose. Not forgetting what was done, but refusing to let it define everything that comes after. Now here's my question for you. When have you been broken by something beyond your control? When has the truth come too late to fix the damage? When have you had to choose between bitterness and building? Because we all have our versions of Ella's cell. Our moments where the world destroys us and we have to decide whether to stay destroyed. Our scars that won't heal but might become part of something stronger. Drop a comment. Tell me your story. Tell me when you survived something that should have broken you. Tell me how you built beauty from ashes. And if this story touched you, if Ella and Aiden's journey made you feel seen, understood, less alone in your own struggles, then subscribe to Shayla's Romance Library. Because this is what we do here. We tell stories about wolves who refuse to stay broken. About love that survives being tested in every possible way. About reformation that's messy and difficult and absolutely worth fighting for. We tell stories that hurt beautifully, that make you feel everything, that remind you why courage matters, why truth matters, why choosing to stand, even when standing costs everything, that matters most of all. Hit that subscribe button. Join this pack of beautiful, broken, brave souls who believe stories can change us. Who believe love is worth the risk. Who believe we can all be a little more like Ella, choosing conscience over convenience, courage over comfort, hope over fear. Thank you for taking this journey. For believing in Ella and Aiden. For hoping they'd find their way home to each other, not back to what they were, but forward to what they could be. Thank you for seeing that some wounds don't heal, but they can be carried, can become part of a story that's bigger than the pain. Thank you for being here. The pack's life finally came out. Too late to prevent the suffering, but in time to prevent the next suffering. In time to prove that truth matters. That standing matters. That reformation, messy, difficult, imperfect reformation, is always worth fighting for. Ella survived. Aiden grew. Their children thrived. And the world changed. One mind, one heart, one pack at a time. That's the real victory. Not perfection, but progress. Not fixing everything, but refusing to give up on anything. And if a wolf who is tortured, exiled, and nearly destroyed can build a life worth living, can find love worth keeping, can raise children worth protecting, can change a world worth saving, then maybe we all can. Maybe we're all marked in our own ways, carrying power we don't fully understand, feared by people who don't know us, surviving things that should break us. And maybe that's okay. Maybe being marked, being different, being powerful, being scared and standing anyway, maybe that's exactly who we're supposed to be. Thank you for being part of this pack. Thank you for believing reformation is possible. Thank you for choosing hope. Until the next story, beautiful souls. Until the next wolf who needs to hear that survival is enough. That broken can become beautiful. That love, real, messy, complicated love, is always, always worth fighting for. See you soon. Shayla's Romance Library, where we tell tales that burn, that transform, that remind you why you're still standing. Welcome home.